Chapter 124. Parents' Orders and Matchmakers' Words. Shen Miao smiled. Naturally, father and mother will worry about this granddaughter's marriage. You, this girl. Old Shen Furen saw that she had bumped into a soft rebuff and almost flew into a rage. When she heard Ren Wanyun's soft cough at the side to remind her, she slowly changed into a calm expression and said, You, this girl is really too capricious. Originally you adore. Then forget it. Now, seeing that you seem to have sobered up a lot these days, it seems that you know the propriety. This assistant minister of the Legislative Bureau's family is considered to be well matched with us. That young master of the Wei family, Wei Qian, is also a dignified person and is an outstanding talent in both literature and martial arts. Even if your father was here, he would not say anything bad about this marriage. You have been brought up to this age, and this is the first time such a family came to propose marriage. If one do not grasp the opportunity well, that young master of the Wei family will turn around and become someone else's husband. Even though old Shen Furen was not good as an elder, her matchmaking skills were not bad. Most likely it was because she was a songstress and knew that young females love to be charming, thus she only said that Wei Qian was a good person in everyone's heart. Even though Shen Miao knew that old Shen Furen did not lie and that Wei Qian was indeed a good person. Even so, Shen Miao was still unmoved and said lightly, Young Master Wei is indeed not bad, but it is not what I wish for. Grandmother, better forget it. My marriage will naturally be decided by my father and mother. You. After being contradicted time and time again, old Shen Furen did not have any patience and finally said angrily, Are you complaining that this grandmother is interfering in your marriage and extending my hand too far? This granddaughter did not say so. The implied meaning was that this was what you said yourself. Old Shen Furen was so angry that she was about to go crazy. Now the unruly Shen Miao was covered with thorns all over her body and could not move at all, making one's heart ache from suffocating. Old Shen Furen hated the first household but was also afraid of Shen Axayan. Thus for so many years, even though her heart was angry, she could only hold it in and not get close to Shen Miao and put on a serious but fair grandmother act. She could not hit Shen Miao as this would be discovered by Shen Axayan and at most he would reprimand her, thus she had been watching coldly as Ren Wanyun and Chen Roqiu raised Shen Miao to become a cripple. Even though it was said that one would die from flattery, but it was rarely discovered by others. In the end, no one knew what happened, but one day, Shen Miao, who had been raised to a cripple, suddenly became quick-witted. Not only was she quick-witted, her temperament also became impervious to everything. She said angrily, Do you still have any respect for your superiors? Shen Miao felt bored. With old Shen Furen's patience and determination, if she was thrown into the inner palace, she would not be able to survive for more than 2 days. She had seen too many powerful females in her past life and old Shen Furen was such a short-sighted and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, she really did not want to put her in her eyes. I ask you again, old Shen Furen still remembered the purpose of today and looked at Shen Miao as she asked, What is your intention in this marriage? I do not agree. Shen Miao answered. Good, good, good. After saying good 3 times in a row, Fuer and Sheer quickly went forward to caress old Shen Furen's chest lest she fainted from anger. Old Shen Furen laughed in anger, Since it is like this, it seems that you are not truly repentant. From today onwards, you will move out of your courtyard and live in the Shen family's ancestral hall. Recite scriptures every day and see if your unruly temperament can be ground down. To live in the ancestral hall, one would have to face the ancestors' memorial tablets every day. For a delicate young lady, one feared that she would be scared out of her wits. Moreover, the ancestral hall was located in a cold place and after staying for a few days, one might get sick. Old Shen Furen said those words in a fit of anger and after finishing, there was a flash of pride in her eyes as she looked at Shen Miao, most likely waiting for Shen Miao to beg for mercy. But Shin Miao did not even frown and said, "Yes. This granddaughter will go back to pack up and immediately rush over." Chapter 125. That light sentence almost choked old Shin Furen to the point that she almost fainted. And after Shin Miao finished saying those words, she really said her goodbyes to old Shin Furen and left. This evil girl. He has no respect for the law. Old Shin Furen was flustered, and because of her lowly birth, she could not say any genteel words and actually scolded, "Little slut." As expected of that old bitch's blood. The old slut that she mentioned was naturally Shin Xian's biological mother, Shin Miao's biological grandmother. Ren Wanyun raised her head and looked out of the door. Shin Miao's figure had long disappeared. "Did you not say that she would definitely agree to this matter?" Old Shin Furen pointed the spearhead at Ren Wanyun. "How is it agreeing to her appearance? What should we do next?" Not only old Shin Furen was puzzled, even Ren Wanyun felt it was strange in her heart. With Wei Qian's conditions, even Shin Qing would find it hard to not be swayed, but Shin Miao actually flatly refused without even thinking about it. She muttered, "It must be that she is still concerned about Prince Ding and pretended not to care on the surface but had not given up. Otherwise, she wouldn't have rejected such a family." She didn't even feel shy when a girl heard about her own marriage. Then what to do now? Old Shin Furen said in a bad mood, if she does not relent on this side, how to write a letter to Shin Xian. In their original plan, they only needed to coax Shin Miao and let Shin Miao reveal that she had a sweetheart in her letter to Shin Xian. After that, before Shin Xian returned to the capital, the marriage was arranged. The leopard cat changed the crown prince and the brides of the two households changed positions. Afterwards all the mistakes would be thrown onto Shin Miao alone. Once a female married, their temperament would be gone and Shin Miao would be afraid in her heart, so she would not carelessly speak about it. Shin Xian would not know that Shin Miao and Shin Qing had exchanged marriage and thought that Shin Miao admired the young master of the Huang family. Huang Dexing liked men. Other than those close to the Huang family, no one else knew about this. From the outside, Huang Dexing seemed like a good man. But now Shin Miao had shown her dissatisfaction with the Wei family's marriage, not to mention writing a letter to Shin Xian. If Shin Miao herself did not agree, then many of the plans would not be able to be played and there would be a lot of trouble. Since the soft approach won't work, I'll use the hard approach. Ren Wanyun said fiercely, "Didn't mother lock her up in the ancestral hall? Then we can say whatever we want about the matters outside. In short, we must settle this marriage as soon as possible and get married as soon as possible so that Qing can be replaced. Otherwise, even if the wedding night could be coaxed, Shin Qing's stomach would not be able to be coaxed." Since Shin Qing couldn't see anything, he had to finish it quickly. Old Shin Furen looked at Ren Wanyun and did not speak. Although she also wanted the first household to be unlucky, if she really used force and was discovered by Shin Xian, she would not be able to bear the consequences. With one look, Ren Wanyun knew what old Shin Furen was thinking about. She gritted her teeth and said, "Mother, do not worry, I will make arrangements after this. Anyway, they won't be able to trace it back to mother." Since the words were said to this point, old Shin Furen no longer put up a front and said, "Then do as you say." In the 100-flower tower, the music was lingering and there was a tall pavilion. A handsome youth was casually dressed in purple, as if there was a faint light from the 9 heavens. His eyelashes were extremely long and his pair of peach blossom eyes were extremely beautiful, but when he looked at people, there was a faintly discernible coldness and cruelty. "Ko." A light cough broke the silence in the pavilion. The well-dressed gentleman placed his folding fan in front of his chest and made a gesture of asking for mercy, "Apologies for being late. You also know how to be late. Really fresh." The purple-clad youth glanced at him. Su Mingfeng touched his nose. This good friend hated not being punctual, and it was fortunate that he had a deep friendship with him. If it was other people, one feared that Xie Jingxing would have brushed his sleeves and would not wait for an incense stick of time. It is really that Wei Qian is not his usual self today. Su Mingfeng smiled bitterly. You also know the young master of the assistant minister of the secretariat's family. He is also quite pitiful. He already had a young lady in his heart, but the family brought up another young lady's marriage because of him. The other party even accepted his birthday invitation, so one feared that this marriage would be settled soon. Wei Qian's heart was not in a good mood, so he pulled me to drink, but... Su Mingfeng pointed to himself. I am currently seriously ill and cannot drink, so I could only persuade for an hour. Boring. Xie Jingxing said with a cold face. It was obvious that Su Mingfeng spent so much time to do such a boring thing and was late for a long time, which made him very unhappy. Su Mingfeng felt helpless in his heart. Xie Jingxing looked cynical and always had a smile on his face, but in fact his heart was very vengeful and was especially picky. One did not know what was not going well these few days, as his expression was also so indifferent. As long as Xie Jingxing looked at people calmly, Su Mingfeng would feel goosebumps all over his body. Actually, Wei Qian was really unlucky. The wife that the family picked for him was not good, but she was an idiot. Previously everyone in Mingqi knew that she chased after Empress Ding, so Wei Qian naturally had no choice but to marry her. He quickly tried to find a topic of conversation, hoping to arouse Xie Jingxing's interest. You should know who she is, right? Shen Xian's daughter, Shen Miao. To be able to marry Wei Qian, it should be considered as a great fortune. You say. Xie Jingxing suddenly opened his mouth and slowly asked, Shen Miao. Chapter 126. Shen Miao. Correct. Su Mingfeng was somewhat surprised by Xie Jingxing's attitude and suddenly thought of something before smiling mischievously. Isn't that the young lady that you saved at the academy examinations? Speaking of which, she has some courage and is not too ugly. Wei Qian, this brat is obviously one who does not know how fortunate he is. He saw Xie Jingxing in deep thoughts and could not help but be surprised. Hey, could it be that you really fancy that young lady? Xie Jingxing sneered and swept a cold glance at Su Mingfeng. You are very idle. Of course I am idle. Su Mingfeng frowned. I am currently seriously ill and cannot attend court, so I spend all day in the residence playing with cats and dogs. You do not appear often recently and are very close to that physician Gao Yang. Are you hiding something from me? If one were to say that their friendship was not shallow when they were young, but as they grew up, Xie Jingxing became more mysterious. Even though he was reminded about the matter of the Su family, sometimes Su Mingfeng felt that he knew nothing about Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing threw a fruit to him. Eat yours. It was obvious that he did not intend to continue this topic. Su Mingfeng's eyes flashed and his lips revealed a bitter smile, but he did not say anything. Not long after the Shen family received the Wei family's Geng invitation, Ren Wanyun also let Xiang Lan invite Shen Gui to Kai Yun Yuan. Ever since Shen Qing's matter, there was a rift between Shen Gui and Ren Wanyun, and both of them did not speak much. These days their relationship was as cold as ice. This time it was Ren Wanyun who took the initiative to admit defeat. Xiang Lan and Kai Ju greeted Shen Gui, who came in, and Ren Wanyun sat in front of the table with some melancholy in her eyes. What is the matter with you again? Shen Gui's tone was still very stiff. In the beginning, because of Shen Qing, Ren Wanyun scolded him for being heartless, which made Shen Gui extremely unhappy. Even though he appreciated that Ren Wanyun was able to manage the internal and external matters well, but he was not a broad-minded person, not to mention that he was scolded by his own wife like a shrew. Master is here. Ren Wanyun lazily glanced at him and her face was very haggard. She had always been astute and high-spirited and never had such an appearance. Shingui's heart softened when he saw this scene. Knowing that Ren Wanyun doted on Shinqing, these days she had put in a lot of effort because of Shinqing. After all, she was his wife and face must be given. He then berated Xianglan and Kaiju. Why is Furin so haggard? How did you all take care of master? Ren Wanyun also heard the gentleness in Shingui's tone and her heart was delighted. She held her forehead and admitted defeat. It is not related to them. It is me who is worried about Qing'er. These days, I haven't been able to eat well and I can't sleep well at night. My heart is very sad. Since Qing'er's matter has already happened, it is useless to think more about it. It is better for you to recuperate your body as the resident still needs you to manage the household. Shingui looked at Ren Wanyun. Previously it was Ren Wanyun who managed the household so naturally there were many conveniences for him. He used the Zhonggong's money to give gifts and Ren Wanyun was also able to handle the account so that no mistakes could be found. Now that Ren Wanyun had to take care of Shinqing, Chen Roqiu was temporarily taking over the management of the family. Naturally, it was not as convenient as before to handle matters. And those advantages were all taken by the third household, thus Shingui was not happy in his heart. Ren Wanyun clenched her teeth. Shingui was only thinking about his official career and did not care about Shinqing at all. She said, I also think so, but Qing'er's body cannot be separated from others and I am worried. So it is better to marry her to the Huang family. When Shingui mentioned the matter, his gentle tone became stiff again. A woman's view is that hair is long but knowledge is short. Qing'er's current situation, it is better to find a good family to marry. The Huang family has a big business and Qing'er would be the legal wife but you do not agree. Chapter 127. Ren Wanyun sneered in her heart. As a father, Shingui was really ruthless. Huang Dexing was such a person and yet Shingui was able to say such words about a good family. Even though she already knew that the person beside her pillow was a cold person who prioritized benefits, but now thinking about it, Ren Wanyun still felt a chill. But at this moment was not the time for her to think about it. She wiped her eyes and said, Master is right. It was me who thought wrongly and it was me who stayed in the inner courtyard all day and could not see such big matters. The family that Master picked is naturally the best. I was initially not willing for Qing'er to marry over but now feel that this is not necessarily a bad thing for Qing'er. Shingui was first surprised for a moment before looking at her incredulously. You agree? Ren Wanyun valued Shinqing more than anything else, so how could she easily agree to this marriage? One had to know that Huang Dexing was interested in males. Yes. A sorrowful expression appeared on Ren Wanyun's face. With Qing'er's current appearance, which good family would want her in the future? I thought about it and only felt that the Huang family was not bad. At least after marrying over, Qing'er would not lack clothes and food. If she really does not live well, that is also her fate. Finishing, she pulled her sleeves and cried softly. Seeing Ren Wanyun like this, Shingui's heart was at ease and somewhat believed in Ren Wanyun's words. Now Shinqing was no longer a virgin and the Huang family only needed a daughter to sit on the position of young Huang Furen to deceive the eyes of the world. If Shinqing married to Huang Dexing, she would not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of her life and it was considered the best ending. Even though as a woman, she might not be able to achieve a perfect relationship in her entire life, but after that kind of thing happened, who would want her? Thinking of this, Shingui sighed and walked to Ren Wanyun's side before patting her back and comforting her. It is good that you have thought it through. Qing'er is after all my daughter and I will not harm her. Huang Darren and I have some friendship so I will let him take care of Qing'er. If Qing'er marries over, she would definitely not suffer grievances. Ren Wanyun's heart was filled with disdain for Shingui's pompous speech, but on the surface there was a look of reliance. Then trouble master to mention to Huang Darren, and let the Huang family send people over to exchange for the Gung invitation. So fast. Shen Gui was somewhat surprised. Now that Qing is in such a state, how can we delay? Ren Wanyun sighed. The longer it drags on, one fear that others will find some clues. After all, Qing had not gone out for a long time. Marrying into the Huang family would at least be able to cover up a little. Moreover, Ren Wanyun caressed her chest. A long night is fraught with dreams. Ever since Qing's accident, I am always afraid. Seeing her palpitating appearance, Shen Gui pondered for a moment before saying, "What you said is reasonable. Qing's matter cannot be dragged on. As such, I will write a letter to Lord Huang to mention this matter. If the Gung card is exchanged, it is not impossible to discuss the date. Everything depends on Master." Ren Wanyun said meekly. Shen Gui said a few more words before leaving in satisfaction. Today Ren Wanyun was submissive, admitted her mistake and did what he said, which made his heart feel much better. The haze of the past few days was swept away and his step seemed to be filled with success. After Shen Gui left Kai Yun Yuan, Xiang Lan closed the door outside before speaking in a panic. "Friend, is it really good to hide this matter from Master?" Ren Wanyun let Shen Gui think that Shen Qing was really willing to marry Huang Dexing but did not tell her that Shen Qing and Shen Miao had the intention to change the marriage. As such, Shen Qing would be married to the genuine virtuous Wei Qian and Shen Miao would be married to the licentious Huang Dexing. Naturally this matter could not be known by Shen Gui. No matter what the ending was, for a person like Shen Gui, as long as it could implicate his career, he would not take the risk. But Ren Wanyun could not let her daughter step into the fire pit. Chapter 128. Naturally hide it from him. He is so heartless to want to use my Qing to exchange for his future and did not even ask if I am willing or not. Ren Wanyun sneered. Her husband's indifference and her daughter's accident had made her look old in this period of time. It was as if a few more wrinkles had appeared overnight and on the originally kind face, there was only a sinister look left. This matter must be foolproof. Even if he were to discover it in the future, it would be too late. But would this not be disadvantageous to second young lady? Kai Ju asked, even if the marriage is successful, how would the Huang and Wei family be willing to know the truth? Do not worry. Ren Wanyun held the paperweight in her hands. The Huang family only want a name. It is the same no matter which one it is. As for the Wei family, if they dare to make a sound, I will accuse the Wei family of raping an innocent commoner. There will always be a way to make them unable to speak. Moreover, her face instantly became sinister. What is wrong with my Qing? Could it be that she cannot be compared to Shen Miao, that little slut? It is the Wei family's fortune to exchange for my Qing. Upon mentioning Shen Miao, Ren Wanyun's entire body trembled with hatred. Xiang Lan and Kai Ju immediately lowered their heads and dared not speak anymore. After a while, Ren Wanyun's voice sounded, but at the moment, the most important thing is to quickly complete the two marriages. It must be done before eldest brother and eldest soul return to the capital. Eldest master will only return to the capital at the end of the year. There are still a few more months. Xiang Lan took a step forward and reminded, it is that fifth young lady's character that is too rude. If she were to know that there is a private engagement, one fear that she would create a big fuss and perhaps escape from the Shen residence in the night. What can be done at that time? Escape. Ren Wanyun said fiercely, also need to see if she has this ability. Is she not locked up in the ancestral hall and grounded? From today onwards, lock up that ancestral hall for me. She actually wanted to lock up Shen Miao alive. Xiang Lan and Kai Ju were shocked and both lowered their heads. Even though in the past the Shen residents suppressed Shen Miao, it was all done on the surface and one would not be able to see it at all. This was the first time that he had used such a thunderous method on Shen Miao. He had almost shed all pretense of cordiality without any scruples. That little slut has a lot of tricks up her sleeves. We can only lock her up. When the time comes, we'll send a cup of wine to the sedan chair. Heaven and earth won't respond. The Huang family isn't easy to deal with either. Look at her after a few days of training. Ren Wanyun did not conceal the viciousness in her words. If it is not possible, there is still His Highness Qin Wang, she said with a proud smile. The winter days were getting colder and reports of success came from the northwest desert. The army led by Shen Exayan was meritorious in repelling the enemy and fought bravely, causing the enemy to be terror-stricken. The people in the Ding capital naturally guessed that when they returned to the capital at the end of the year, Shen Exayan would definitely be rewarded with numerous merits. The glory of the Shen family really made others jealous, but it was all achieved through real swords and spears on the battlefield. Now that the Xiongnu had not retreated and there were neighboring countries eyeing them covetously, the imperial family of Ming Qi naturally wanted to put the Shen family in an important position, but in the future, it was hard to say. Cooking the hound after the cunning hare was killed was something that the imperial family loved to do. After all, a new emperor would have a new generation of ministers. Especially with the current 9 princes of the Ming Qi imperial family, no one dared to underestimate the undercurrents that were surging in private. If one were to say that there was any recent hot topic in the Ding capital, it would be the Shen family's intention to marry. But one did not know why this matter was spread so mysteriously. One only knew that there were 2 families that came to propose marriage. One was the assistant minister of the legislative bureau's Wei family and the other was the supervisor of the junior residence's Huang family. These 2 families were prestigious and the 2 young masters were considered young talents and could be said to be a match for the Shen family in terms of social status. Shen Yu still went to Guangwentang as usual, thus everyone guessed that the ones who were going to marry would be the D daughter of the first household, Shen Miao, and the D daughter of the second household, Shen Qing. Chapter 129. Forget about Shen Qing, but Shen Miao's identity was somewhat subtle. Among the current military officials, only the Marquis of Linan could be compared to her. But the Marquis of Linan seemed to be a smart person and other than the Emperor's orders, he would usually defend the capital. Shen Exayan would be stationed at the border all year round. With a father like Shen Exayan who held great power, no matter who Shen Miao married, it would mean that the husband's family would be able to get help. The eyes of the imperial family of Ming Qi were all watching and it was fortunate that the 2 people who came to propose were civil officials and would not be able to get involved with military officials. Moreover, the Wei family and the Huang family's names were pleasant to hear, but they were on the path of moderation and temporarily did not get involved in the muddy waters of the fight for the heir apparent. So this marriage, as compared to others, especially the rumor of Shen Miao being in love with Prince Ding, was much smoother. In Guangwentang, Yi Peilan asked Shen Yu, that older and younger sister of yours, are they really going to marry? They actually did not even come to Guangwentang. Ever since Wulong Temple, Shen Miao and Shen Qing had not left the residence, much less come to Guangwentang. Shen Miao was grounded and Shen Qing needed to recuperate. Shen Yu smiled, I also do not know. Mother is mysterious about it. Most likely so. But speaking of which, your older and younger sister are rather lucky. Jiang Shaoxian thought about it, especially Shen Miao. This gentleman Wei and gentleman Huang, both of them are not bad. Why did it not fall on your head? Shen Yu pretended to be angry, I still want to stay in the residence for a few more years. I have not thought about marriage. But there was a knot in her heart. Indeed, at their age, they would definitely start to care about their own marriage. But in the Shen residence, Shen Miao was younger than her by 2 years and now that they were engaged, she was left behind. Forget about Shen Qing, she was a person whose body was spoiled, but when she knew that Shen Miao might be able to find a good home, Shen Yu's heart was filled with unspeakable jealousy. Most likely she could not bear to see Shen Miao doing well, especially Shen Miao who was not as good as her in every aspect. Now that there was a family like the Wei family who took the initiative to propose marriage, it meant that Shen Miao herself was not bad. If it was not for Chen Roqiu persuading her, one fear that Shen Yu would continue to drill into this bull's horn and refuse to come out. You. Bai Wei tapped her forehead. You are in the prime of your life. Of course, you have to plan for yourself. So, she pointed her chin to the other side, what do you think of him? She was talking about Kai Lin. Shen Yu followed Bai Wei's line of sight, and Kai Lin felt Shen Yu's gaze. He turned his head and froze for a moment, then awkwardly avoided it. Shen Yu's eyes suddenly turned red as she bit her lower lips tightly. The youth who was previously infatuated with her was now avoiding her like a snake or scorpion. For such an arrogant person like Shen Yu, she naturally felt a great humiliation. Kai Lin avoided Shen Yu's accusing gaze and his heart was somewhat worried. Ever since he was taught a lesson by Shen Miao in the academy examinations, he would feel an unknown fear whenever he saw Shen Miao. It was as if it was a natural fear of danger that made him want to avoid Shen Miao. Moreover, that day Xie Jingxing seemed to have helped Shen Miao out of trouble. Kai Lin was considered an overlord in the Ding capital, but he could not overpower Xie Jingxing, so naturally he would not take the initiative to go against Xie Jingxing. No matter if Xie Jingxing's help that day was intentional or not, Kai Lin would not take the initiative to provoke Shen Miao. And on that day, Shen Yu did not even look at him once from beginning to end, which made this youth's blazing heart to completely cool down. Seeing Shen Yu's awkwardness, Yi Peilon pursed her lips and diverted the topic, but in another half a month, it will be your family's old foreign's birthday. One think that I should go and pick some gifts. Old Shenforen's birthday every year would be incomparably glorious. This kind of extravagance could even be compared to the imperial family. Old Shenforen's eyesight was shallow and felt that the grander the birthday, the more radiance there would be. Every year many officials would be invited over, so Shen Gui and Shen Wan were naturally happy to see it happen. This way, they would have a better relationship with their colleagues. Chapter 130. For this kind of birthday celebration, naturally a gift must be received. One think that Yi Peilon and the rest would be present at the birthday celebration next month. After all, at this time of the year, all the better officials in Ming Qi would be invited by the Shen family. Yes. Bai Wei seemed to remember, I almost forgot about this matter. Luckily Peilon reminded me. What gift did you prepare for old Shenforen? As a talented female in the capital, Shen Yu would naturally give old Shenforen face at the birthday banquet every year. If one were to say that what Shen Qing took out was expensive, then what Shen Yu took out was unique and exquisite. Only Shen Miao would always give something that made one laugh till their teeth fell off. It is only embroidered a portrait. Shen Yu said modestly. Now that you mention it, I start to be curious. Jiang Shaoxian said nastily, then what would that fifth younger sister of yours give? Could it be that she was busy embroidering the wedding dress and completely forgot about old foreign's birthday gift? When Feng and Ning, who was lying on the table, heard it, she coldly snorted and got up to leave the table. Yi Peilon and the rest's words also fell into the ears of Pei Lang, who was tidying up the things on the stage. These days, he naturally heard the news of Shen Miao's engagement but had a strange feeling. That young female's eyes were like a beast's. To let her hide in the inner courtyard so early, would she know? At the same time, the object of everyone's discussion, Shen Miao, was arranging the chess pieces in front of her in the ancestral hall. The wind in the ancestral hall was cold and the floor was made of greenish-gray stone slabs. When one kneeled down, one would be able to feel the chill in the seams of one's kneecap. Jingzhe and Guyu had brought some soft cushions, but those cushions did not have any effect. It was Shen Miao who instructed them to boil some herbs and place them in the corners of the room. With a little smoke, it would be able to drive away the cold and prevent the body from getting sick. Jingzhe and Guyu initially did not believe it, but after seeing that the herbal soup was really effective, they even asked Shen Miao where did she get this secret recipe from. Shen Miao only said that she heard it from others, but she herself knew that it was something that she learned during her years as a hostage in the Qin country. The weather was too cold and there was not enough money, so one could only find the cheapest method to warm up and get rid of the moisture in one's body. Now the things in the ancestral hall were really nothing. Young ladies still care about playing chess. Jingzhe stomped her feet. Shen Miao arranged the chess pieces in front of her in a straight line. On the chessboard, the originally well-arranged chess pieces were arranged so that the black was black and the white was white, and there was no order to it. Chun Tao had Mo Qing bring the message over. Jingzhe saw that Shen Miao did not speak and continued, "Second for and want to change the marriage between you and eldest young lady. That young master of the Huang family is a cut sleeve, so what can be done? How can young lady still have the mood to play chess?" One thought of it was a good marriage, but of Shen rejected old and was in Shen's proposal in of Yao. But even if it was like this, Chun Tao still found out that the Shen family had already agreed to this marriage behind Shen Miao's back. It was just that the people in the western courtyard did not know about it, which meant that other than Shen Miao, everyone knew that Shen Miao was going to marry. If she married, it would be, Shi Qian would be. Shen. Married. Shen of. Shen of the Shen of. When the few maids heard this, they almost went crazy. Mo Qing also said that if Shen Miao was willing, he could bring Shen Miao to escape. Mo Qing was previously a person of the pugilistic world and naturally did not know that it was easy to escape. Once one escaped, it meant that the matters behind could be fabricated and no one would know the truth. Moreover, Shen Miao did not have any intention to escape from the start, thus she flatly rejected the words. If it is not possible, at least let Mo Qing help young lady to bring the message to master. This matter is also hidden from master. They want to take advantage of master not return to the capital to let young lady get married. Like this, the rice is cooked and nothing can be changed. Guyu also advised. She knew that Shen Miao had her own ideas, but since she did not say anything, the few of the maids could only worry for Shen Miao. Chapter 131. What message? Shen Miao lightly said, "Currently the western courtyard is guarded by Ren Wanyun's people and even a fly would not be able to fly out. If I were to escape, what would happen to the rest of the people in the courtyard? Even though I am not a benevolent person, there are some people that father and mother specially left for me. Do you believe that once I leave, Ren Wanyun would immediately kill everyone in the courtyard to silence them?" Jingzhe and Guyu were startled. Moreover, do you think that it is that simple to pass a message? There are people guarding here all day and their intention is to lock me up. Do you think that they would leave a loophole for me to take advantage of? Then you all are looking down on this second Shen of mine. Ren Wanyun's mind was not something to be feared in Shen Miao's eyes, but in this world, a mother was strong. For Shen Qing's happiness, Ren Wanyun would naturally do her utmost to complete this matter. On this matter, Ren Wanyun's bet was not small. After all, the matter of exchanging the marriage was not discussed with Shen Gui and it was her own idea. If it was successful, naturally everyone would be happy, but if it failed, one feared that Ren Wanyun would no longer have a place to stand in the second household. But young lady, are we just going to let it go like this? Jingzhe anxiously said, "This servant will risk my life and not let young lady marry that cut sleeve. Can you all see this chess game?" Shen Miao did not speak and only pointed to the chessboard on the table. On the chessboard, the white and black pieces were arranged in 2 rows and were clearly separated. It was somewhat strange. This servant does not understand chess and also do not understand what kind of game this is. After a long while, Guyu carefully answered. What did you see? Shen Miao asked. Jingzhe boldly answered, the white and black pieces are arranged together and it is very clear. Yes. A light flashed in Shen Miao's eyes. This game of chess is to place all the chips on the table. You know my chess pieces and I also know your chess pieces. The final winner would depend on one's own ability. Jingzhe and Guyu looked at each other and did not understand Shen Miao's meaning. Ren Wanyan thought that she knew all my chess pieces, but in fact it is not so. She took out a black piece from behind and placed it beside the white piece. I still have one last move. Old Furen's birthday is next month. She suddenly asked. Exactly. Jingzhe answered, heard from Chun Tao that second Furen's intention is to announce young lady's marriage during Old Furen's birthday banquet. We have to do it before father returns to the capital. Shen Miao smiled. That's right, there are still a few months before the end of the year. One feared that it would be too late. Guyu was deeply worried. Really? Shen Axan should have returned to the court at the end of the year. Unfortunately, in the 68th year of Ming Qi, because Shen Axan defeated the enemy in the northwest region, the enemy fled and surrendered in advance. The Shen family's army brought the surrender letter and returned to the Ding capital a few months earlier. Speaking of which, it was a coincidence, or perhaps it was because Shen Axan wanted to express his filial piety. Shen Axan would not be in the capital for old Shen Furen's birthday. After a few times, people would say that Shen Axan was unfilial. Thus on old Shen Furen's 70th birthday in the 68th year of Ming Qi, Shen Axan returned to the capital in advance. On that day, Shen Axan suddenly returned to the residence and old Shen Furen was having a banquet with guests in the residence, but Shen Miao did not attend. Naturally it was because she was hiding in the residence of Prince Ding. Shen Axan originally wanted to come back to enjoy the happiness of a family but knew that his daughter did not care about etiquette and went to the residence of Prince Ding to demand for her. But because of Fu Xiaoyi's hypocritical warmth, she turned a deaf ear to Shen Axan's words and even used death to force her to marry Prince Ding. Now thinking about it, it was a sin. Shen Axan rushed back and saw such an unfilial daughter who dragged the Shen family into the abyss with no path of return. This lifetime was not the previous lifetime. She did not escape the Shen family because of Prince Yu and also did not blindly fall in love with Fu Xiaoyi's appearance. If Shen Axan came back and saw a different daughter, would she be able to redeem a little of the sins of the previous lifetime? Father had always respected old Furen. Shen Miao said lightly. Yes. Jingzhe answered. Old Shen Furen was a songstress and was good at acting. In the beginning, she played the role of a loving mother flawlessly. When the old general was still alive, he could not pick out any mistakes at all. Generals valued relationships and Shen Axan knew how to repay kindness. In his early years, he had received old Shen Furen's kindness and he was unable to think that this old woman had a vicious heart under her skin. Second Shen, this time it was a bargain for me. Shen Miao said with a smile and her pair of bright eyes were astonishingly bright, just nice. Tear it all together for the world to see. Chapter 132. On the 3rd day of the 11th month, it was a bright sunny day. It was rare to have such a good day in winter and coincided with old Shen Furen's 70th birthday banquet. The general's mansion had been cleaned up inside and out, and the government had also taken out money to buy new things. The birthday banquet was naturally held in the East Courtyard. The environment of the East Courtyard was quiet and serene. The flowers were trimmed in a picturesque manner, and the maids were dressed in clean and tidy dresses. Their speech and mannerisms were unconventional, and they were all delicate and well-behaved. As soon as Ling Ren walked in, he felt that this was indeed the style of a wealthy family. Old Shen Furen was sitting high up in the main hall of Rong Jing Tang, and there were already a number of Furens and young ladies coming to and fro to give their greetings. The Shen family was after all a first-class military aristocratic family in Mingqi, thus the high-ranking officials and noble people would come over to bribe them. Ren Wanyun was also busy greeting the guests. Even though Chen Roqiu was temporarily managing the family, but in the past old Shen Furen's birthday banquets were all handed over to Ren Wanyun to manage. As for dealing with these noble Furens, Ren Wanyun could do it better than Chen Roqiu. Chen Roqiu at the end had the airs of a scholarly family, but Ren Wanyun was different. She responded appropriately, and in a moment Rong Jing Tang was filled with laughter. Shen Yuanbo snuggled up to old Shen Furen as he ate the honey lactose, and the Furens below complimented him from time to time that he was so smart at such a young age and would definitely have great achievements in the future. Old Shen Furen beamed with joy when she heard it, and even Ren Wanyun's heart that was clouded by Shen Qing was swept away because of these compliments. It was Chen Roqiu who felt uncomfortable when she saw that everyone was praising Shen Yuanbo and Shen Yuan, who was on duty outside. The thing that the third household feared the most was talking about sons. Everyone knew that Chen Roqiu had been married to Shen Wan for many years, and other than Shen Yu, she did not have any sons. But Shen Wan did not have any interest in other females. Old Shen Furen wanted to give Shen Wan a few more concubines to spread out, but was rejected by Shen Wan. Old Shen Furen thus vented her anger on Chen Roqiu, and compared to Chen Roqiu, Ren Wanyun was obviously more favored by old Shen Furen. But why didn't I see Shen family's eldest young lady and fifth young lady today? Yi Furen said with a smile. Ren Wanyun was in charge of receiving these Furens, and Shen Yu naturally went to get close to those noble young ladies. He took them to tea and refreshments in the garden. But today he still did not see Shen Miao and Shen Qing. When Ren Wanyun and old Shen Furen heard it, their expressions sank at the same time, and Chen Roqiu's lips curled up. Shen Qing's body had not recovered, and now she was able to see others rationally, but she kept saying that she must dismember Shen Miao's body into 10,000 pieces. However, these words could not be heard by outsiders. These days, Ren Wanyun had been comforting Chen Qing to prevent her from having the idea of committing suicide. As for how to comfort her, Chen Roqiu could think of it. It was nothing more than to promise Shen Miao what kind of miserable ending she would end up in. As for Shen Miao, she did not know from where she heard that old Shen Furen had secretly accepted the Wei family's Gung invitation, and from that day onwards, she changed her previous silence and resisted like crazy, even threatening to resist the marriage and even run away from it. When these words were heard by old Shen Furen, it was not good. Ren Wanyun and old Shen Furen were thinking that now the unruliness in Shen Miao's bones was gradually revealed. What she said about resisting the marriage and escaping was indeed something that could be done. But now that Shen Miao must not meet with any mishap, once something happened to her, the matter of changing the marriage with the Shen sisters would not be possible. Thus from the moment Shen Miao threatened to resist the marriage, old Shen Furen and Ren Wanyun directly locked Shen Miao in the ancestral hall. The ancestral hall was at the most southwest courtyard of the Shen residence, and generally no one could see it. The number of guards outside had increased by at least half, and all the maids in the western courtyard, including Shen Miao's 4 personal maids, were found out by old Shen Furen and held tightly in her hands. Chapter 133. The unspoken meaning was that if Shen Miao made a move, these few maids would not be able to protect her. Thus these days Shen Miao had been locked up in the Shen family's ancestral hall, chanting and praying daily. Ren Wanyun hoped to use this to grind down Shen Miao's unruly character and also to prevent any accidents. Today was old Shen Furen's birthday, and if Shen Miao was released, one was afraid that she would say something shocking in public. Thus after discussing with old Shen Furen, they simply did not allow Shen Miao to appear in front of everyone. Thinking of Shin Miao, Ren Wanyun had some headaches. She had been immersed in the mansion for so many years, but now she could not even tell what a young lady was thinking in her heart. To say that Shin Miao was an idiot, but she quietly schemed against everyone regarding Shin Qing's matter. To say that she was calm, but she did not conceal the fact that she was going to escape the marriage. She could only be locked up. After Chen Roqiu finished admiring Ren Wanyun's wonderful expression, she smiled and said, "Qing'er's health has not recovered and will not come out now. She will come out during old Furen's birthday ceremony. However, Sister Miao has contracted an illness and cannot be exposed to the wind as there is a rash on her face. There are so many young ladies present and one was afraid that this young lady would be infected, so one let her stay in the room by herself. If it was said that Shin Miao had contracted an illness, it would be inevitable that someone would want to investigate and take a look, but if it was said that this illness could cause others to contract it, naturally no one would dare to ask about Shin Miao. Especially since the young ladies love to be beautiful, how would they take such a big risk to look at her?" Jiang Shaoxian's mother, Jiang Furen, also smiled and her words had a hint of probing. "So it is like this. I thought that the two young ladies were busy embroidering the dowry and were not even willing to see us. Wanyun must take good care of the young ladies so that in the future when they marry, there would not be any delay." Finishing speaking, it immediately attracted the echoes of the surrounding Furens. The marriage between the Wei and Huang family had spread like wildfire in the Ding capital, but unfortunately the Shin family had never confirmed it. This made one feel somewhat strange, and there were quite a number of people who came to sound it out. As for which young lady would be married to whom, it was still a complete mystery. As a result, Madame Jiang had decided to ask this question. She wanted to see if this rumor of a marriage could really be carried out. Ren Wanyun's eyes flashed and naturally knew Jiang Furen's intention. She said with a smile, "What are you saying? Even if one is busy with embroidering the wedding dress, if it is old Furen's birthday, one will naturally come out to show filial piety. If it was not that the two children are unluckily ill, why would one not come out to see all the Furens?" His words were full of ambiguity, as if he was admitting to this marriage. The Furens present were all experienced people in the residence and were able to understand Ren Wanyun's meaning. In a short moment, words of congratulations were heard. Old Shin Furen caressed Shin Yuanbo's face with a loving smile, looking like the host and guest were enjoying themselves. In the garden of Choshui Garden, there was a group of young girls. They were playing chess on a green stone table, eating snacks, and chatting. Speaking of which, Jiang Shaoxian said, "I haven't seen your elder and younger sister until now. Could it be that they are really sick?" "They are really sick." Shin Yu shook her head and there was a trace of worry in her eyes. "Eldest sister's illness is getting better, but fifth younger sister's illness is somewhat serious." The rash on her face even infected the few maids beside her. She hung her head down. "When you all came today, one fear that you did not even see the maids beside them." "No wonder." Bai Wei was suddenly enlightened. "There are so many people guarding outside the western courtyard and one did not see anyone coming out. One think that those servants in the courtyard are afraid of coming out and getting infected. Did not Teacher Pei in the academy say that there were places with plague, and in order to prevent the plague from wreaking havoc everywhere, those who got sick were isolated? It is precisely this logic." Shin Yu said. Yi Pei Lan touched her shoulders and shivered. "It is really scary. It better not get infected on us." "Do not worry." Shin Yu smiled. "As long as one does not go to the western courtyard, naturally it will be safe. You see, am I not infected? You are really broad-minded to stay together with this kind of younger sister." Yi Pei Lan's lips twitched. Why is this Shin Miao like a jinx, always having such things happen? On the other side, Feng and Ning's eyes flashed with anger, but she suppressed it and scolded softly. "One do not know if this is to make Shin Miao hate others or to make others hate her." Really pretentious. She was naturally talking about Shin Yu. Qin, who was at the front of Feng and Ning, snorted coldly. Her face was still arrogant, but the gaze she used to look at Shen Yu was filled with contempt. Out of the two of them, Feng and Ning's relationship with Shen Miao was not bad, so naturally she was excluded by Shen Yu. As for Qin, she was born beautiful and had an arrogant temperament. In Guangwentang, she was considered as Shen Yu's opponent. Today it was Shen Yu who came to greet the various daughters, so Qin was naturally ignored. Thus these two people were actually able to sit together due to a freak combination of factors. Who knows if she is sick or not? Qin had always looked down on Shen Yu, and when these words were heard by Feng and Ning, she immediately said, "So you also think so? Why not let us go and see Shen Miao? I do not have any friendship with her. If you want to go, go by yourself." Qin rejected without hesitation and added, "But currently no one is allowed to enter the western courtyard of the Shen residence as one is afraid of getting a rash. One think that you will not be able to enter. How can there be such a thing?" Feng and Ning was filled with righteous indignation. They are all granddaughters of the Shen residence, so why can't Shen Miao also participate in old Shen Furen's birthday celebration? To lock one up in the western courtyard, is it not any different from being in jail? It is better for you not to bother about other people's matters. Qin glanced at Feng and Ning. "After all, it has nothing to do with you and me." Feng and Ning bit her lips unwillingly but was unable to say anything. She could only stare hatefully at Shen Yu, who was surrounded by the crowd and chatting merrily. But no one saw that in the shade of the trees, a figure flashed and quickly disappeared into the flowers. The northwest corner of the Shen residence was a barren courtyard, and because the terrain was not good and there were many weeds growing there, it was directly abandoned. Other than the occasional birds that flew by and the wild cats that were resting, usually no one would come over. Today there were a few people standing under the wall. The person in the lead had his back facing the garden and one did not know what he was thinking about. Someone behind said, "Master, this subordinate passed by the eastern courtyard of the Shen residence and heard that there are people guarding the western courtyard." Another person, however, said, "This subordinate had checked and there are only people guarding the western courtyard and the guards are not here. But outside the Shen residence's ancestral hall, there are many experts guarding. Could it be a diversion?" That person turned his head and revealed a handsome face. "The thing is in the Shen residence's ancestral hall." Chapter 134. The eastern courtyard of the general's residence was naturally very lively. Guests came and went, those who wished for the birthday and those who sent gifts. Before the banquet had even started, there was already a joyous and harmonious look. Old Shen Furen always had to pretend to be extravagant in front of outsiders. Whenever a young lady came forward to offer birthday congratulations, she would always give out some valuable first meeting gifts. Seeing this scene, the smiles on those Furen's faces became more genuine, but Ren Wanyun secretly gritted her teeth. Ren Wanyun was in charge of the public money and usually she had to manage the affairs of the third household. The more old Tai squandered, the less she could fill her own pockets. Moreover, Shen Gui still had to make arrangements in the official circles, so one feared that in the following days, money would be stretched to make ends meet. This side was extraordinarily lively, but the other side was not. At the southwest corner of the Shen residence's ancestral hall, it was currently deserted, and outside the courtyard doors, there were some people dressed as guards. It was just an ancestral hall, so naturally there was no need for such a lineup. The reason for this was because these people were responsible for watching Shen Miao, so that she would not escape. The ancestral hall was located in a cold place and one would not be able to see the sun for many years. Now that it was winter, one would feel the bone-piercing cold wind upon walking in. There was a smell of incense ashes in the air, and the incense in front of the shrine was still curling up, making those cold memorial tablets feel like they were riding on the clouds. "Young lady." Guyu rubbed her hands. Today is old Furen's birthday, but they deliberately locked young lady here. This is too much of a bully. Not to mention asking Shen Miao out, there was not even a word of greeting. It was simply treating Shen Miao as a servant who had made a mistake. What is the hurry? Shen Miao stood in front of the window, and outside the window were trees with withered leaves. In the winter, the bare branches looked exceptionally bleak. How can young lady not be anxious? Guyu had been holding it in for so many days and finally could not help but say, they locked young lady here and it is clearly to force a marriage. When Master and Furen return, young lady would have already married into the Huang family. Even if Master and Furen protect young lady's life would be ruined. Jingzhi kept fiddling with the charcoal brazier on the ground. In the cold ancestral hall, only this charcoal brazier could give out some warmth. A small bed was placed in the inner room. Shen Miao shook her head. Take the few blankets in this room and dry them outside for 2 hours. Young lady. Guyu stomped her feet and was somewhat anxious at Shen Miao's nonchalant attitude. But after being swept by Shen Miao's gaze, he could no longer speak and could only suppress his anger as he carried the quilt out of the room and followed Shen Miao's instructions to dry the quilt outside. Today is a rare day. Shen Miao looked out the window. The sunlight could not reach the ancestral hall, only the courtyard. She couldn't leave the courtyard of the ancestral hall, but she didn't want to leave either. Young lady said so. Jingzhi finally stopped fiddling with the charcoal in the basin. Will Master and Furen really rush back today? Shen Miao told Jingzhi that there was naturally no need to worry about anything because on the day of old Shen Furen's birthday, Shen Xian and wife would return to the Ding capital. Even though these words were too ridiculous, there was no messenger to inform that Shen Xian would return to the capital today and there was still some time before the end of the year. Shen Miao was locked up in the ancestral hall every day, so how would she get such news? But when Jingzhi faced Shen Miao, she was unable to ask the questions in her heart. In her own young lady, she found a bearing that she did not have in the past. One point was that the words that she said would always make others believe without any conditions. Shen Miao said, in a while, think of ways to entangle those guards outside, make them stay further away from this courtyard. After all, they would not leave directly, but it is also good to stay further away. Chapter 135. This servant understands. Jingzhi said. Even though she did not know why Shen Miao would do this, but these days in the ancestral hall with Shen Miao, she found that Shen Miao was not flustered by the scene in front of her. There were 2 reasons why one would not panic in a bad situation. One was that one was stupid and did not know about it, and the other was that one already had a strategy to deal with it. As for Shen Miao, Jingzhi did not think that she was stupid. So even if her heart was as worried as Guyu, Jingzhi unconditionally believed that Shen Miao would be able to deal with the situation in front of her. Shen Miao noticed her gaze and sighed slightly in her heart. Among her 4 maids, Guyu was the most intelligent, Bai Lu the most calm, Shuangjiang the most loyal and Jingzhi was the most daring. In the beginning, in order to help Fu Xiuyi win over the powerful minister, Jingzhi used her beauty to become the concubine of that powerful minister. The powerful minister was lustful for beauty and Jingzhi also had her methods. Even though she was beaten to death by the legitimate wife, but before she died, she gave out the weakness of that powerful minister, allowing Fu Xiuyi to win over the other party. As a maid, she actually had such courage. Jingzhi was not an ordinary young lady. So in this matter, Guyu, Bailu and Shuangjiang were not suitable and only Jingzhi was slightly better. But after Jingzhi knew what she wanted to do, Shen Miao did not know if she would continue to help. After all, what she was about to do was simply too shocking. Actually, Jingzhi endured it but still said softly, if young lady wants, it is not impossible to let Mo Qing think of ways to bring young lady out. Mo Qing's skills were above the guards of the general residence. Even though two fists could not fight against four hands, it was not impossible to grab a gap and bring someone out. And then Shen Miao asked back, the heavens and earth are so big. Would the world be at peace after escaping? The 4 of your slave contracts are in old Furen's hands. If I leave, what will happen to you? Jing Zhe knelt down on the ground and said, this servant knows that young lady is willing to stay here because of these servants' lives, but if young lady were to suffer misfortune because of these servants, this servant would not be able to absolve the blame even if I were to die 10,000 times. In the beginning, Master and Madam chose us to stay by young lady's side so that we could take care of young lady. How could we let Master take care of us instead? A trace of emotion flashed in Shen Miao's eyes. Shen Xian was indeed very good at picking people. These 4 maids, even in her most difficult times in her previous life, there was never a trace of betrayal. However, people were not goods. Things in this world were just that simple. Kindness must be repaid, and enmity must be repaid. In order to win over people's hearts, one couldn't just give up on the maids by one side. Do not worry. Shen Miao said, nothing will happen to you and me. Today is Lao Furen's birthday. I heard that second sister made a guanyin painting for grandmother. Since they have forgotten that I am here, I can't let it go. She smiled, I also have a big gift for old madam, but I don't know if she has the fortune to enjoy it. Dozens of li away from the Ding capital, there were horses drinking water by the frozen stream. The withered grassland looked somewhat yellow and withered, and the soldiers were taking a rest here. Sitting furthest away from the group of soldiers was a middle-aged man. His skin was bronze in color, most likely it was because of the sun and rain on the battlefield, but it was clear that he was strong. His figure was like a small mountain and his brows were awe-inspiring. With thick eyebrows and big eyes, he had a full beard and with one glance, he looked extremely forthright. The female sitting beside him was stroking the head of the horse that was gnawing on the grass roots. That female was also middle-aged and was wearing a green short jacket and a pair of golden embroidered breeches. Her hair was tied up in a simple bun and she had a pair of spirited eyes. She was also delicate and pretty, but what attracted people to her was her valiant and formidable-looking temperament. There was a pair of silver bracelets on her wrist, and when she stroked the horse, there was a tinkling sound. Chapter 136. Furen, there is approximately another 2 hours before reaching the Ding capital. The middle-aged man smiled. After staying in the northwestern region all day, the air is sweet when one returns to the capital. What is not good about the northwestern region? The woman's beautiful eyes stared and asked rather shrewdly, I grew up in the bitter cold of the northwestern region. If you like it sweet, why did you marry me? That man quickly begged for mercy with a bitter face, Furen is right. This capital is sweet and not suitable for us rough men. It is still better in the northwestern region. When winter comes, one can still go hunting in the deep mountains. Silver foxes can run around and one can hunt and make robes for Furen. When the woman heard it, her lips then raised and scolded with a smile, speaking official words when meeting an official. These 2 people were not others but the formidable great general Shen Xian and his Furen, Luo Shuiyan. Today they rushed back in a hurry to participate in old Shen Furen's birthday celebration. Before this, they did not inform the Ding capital and because they had obtained the enemy's surrender letter in advance, returning triumphantly this early was most likely to give everyone in the capital a surprise. We have never seen Mother's birthday celebration before. Luo Shuiyan said, in the past, one would return at the end of the year to hand over Mother's rewards from His Majesty as a birthday gift. Today one is in a rush to return, one do not know if that fire rat cloak would be able to enter old Tai-Tai's eyes. Why can't it enter old Tai-Tai's eyes? When Shen Xian heard it, he immediately asked back, that is a good thing. Even on the battlefield, it is a treasure. With it, one would be invulnerable. In the beginning, in order to hunt that fire rat, I had to guard the mountain for 7 days and 7 nights. If it was not that you insisted on giving it to Mother, I would give it to you. Speaking till the end, Shin Xian's voice gradually lowered. Obviously these words were somewhat disobedient, but a person's heart was not a scale and there would always be a biased part. Even though old Shin Furen treated Shin Xian very well, but after all she was not his biological mother and the blood relationship could not be faked, thus Shin Xian naturally doted on his wife a little more. Moreover, Luo Shuaiyan usually followed him to the battlefield and this fire rat cloak was more useful to her than old Shin Furen. If it was not that Luo Shuaiyan insisted on giving it to old Shin Furen, Shin Xian would have made the cloak for Luo Shuaiyan first. What do you know? Luo Shuaiyan glared at him. You miss old Taitai's birthday every year. Even if you return at the end of the year and give the rewards from His Majesty to old Taitai, who would really know? The last time when we returned to the capital, I heard that you deliberately did not kiss old Taitai's birthday. Did you know that I heard? That you deliberately did not kiss. If you aren't worried about your reputation, Zhao Zhao can't have an unfilial father. When the words were said, Shin Xian was silent for a long time. Indeed, even though the conditions in the Ding capital was not as harsh as the northwestern region and there were no traps of the enemy's swords and spears, but it was not really peaceful. Of them husband and wife were nodding. Of the rumors. That was. The was. Were dong. Luo Shuaiyan said again, you know that I do not understand the twists and turns of the residents. Our Luo family does not have so many rules. I can only use the simplest way. This fire rat cloak is precious and if old Taitai's favor is obtained, old Taitai would be happy and everyone would see it. The rumors would naturally fall apart. After a long while, Shin Xian then said, it is still Furen who is thoughtful. I am not doing it for you. It is for Zhao Zhao. Luo Shuaiyan snorted and her expression suddenly became melancholy. You and I, husband and wife, are not in the Ding capital all year round. Even though the northwest region is too dangerous and Zhao Zhao is still young and cannot be brought over. But for so many years, we have not personally taught and accompanied her. It is us who have let her down. When Shin Xian heard it, he also sighed and hung his head down. A flash of pain appeared in his eyes. There were no cruel parents in the world and there were no parents who did not love their children. However, he and Luo Shuaiyan were destined to fight on the battlefield and Shin Miao could not accompany them. When the two armies fought, the methods were dazzling and there were many cases of kidnapping each other's relatives and friends. They could only endure the pain and be separated from their daughter. At least in the Ding capital, there was no need to worry about Shin Miao's safety. Chapter 137. Luo Shuaiyan seemed to get sadder the more she thought about it and continued, I often think if it is really safe to place Zhao Zhao in the capital. Without parents by her side, is she really happy? Every year when we meet her at the end of the year, she would always treat us coldly but it is all our fault. So no matter what she does, we cannot blame her. Shin Miao was not close to Shin Xian and wife and even Shin Qiu because these so-called relatives did not accompany her since young. She was close to Ren Wanyun, Chen Ro Qiu and even old Shin Furen because these people were with her all the time and they were the relatives in her eyes. And Shin Xian and wife were extremely obedient to their daughter and no matter how famous Shin Miao's stupidity was in the capital, they never got angry at their daughter because it was all because of them. Shin Xian patted Luo Shuaiyan's shoulder. There will be a day when Zhao Zhao will understand our difficulties. Will she really understand? Luo Shuaiyan smiled bitterly. Sometimes I would even think, who was the one that caused Zhao Zhao to be so mischievous now? Shin residence. She suddenly stopped and looked at Shin Xian with some annoyance. Shin Axian naturally understood the meaning behind her words and his expression changed slightly. After a moment, he sighed and held his beloved wife's hand. Furen is thinking too much. Mother and younger sister-in-law will teach Jiao Jiao well, and if it is not right, Jiao Jiao would not be so close to them. Shen Miao's attitude towards the two aunts was so good that it made one jealous. As a result, some thoughts were out of place. It is me who is thinking too much, Luo Shuiyan said. She was the precious daughter of the Northwest Luo family and was also a military family. Even though she was a third-rank military official, everyone in the family were iron-blooded men. Luo Shuiyan was the youngest sister and had 3 older brothers above her, so since she was born, there were only her parents and older brothers in the family and there were not many dirty things. She had seen little of the dark side of the large families and did not know the dangers involved. If one knew about it, one would rather let Shen Miao take the risk and stay by her side than to leave Shen Miao alone in that terrible Shen residence. Just as she was speaking, she heard someone calling from behind, "Father, Mother." Shen Xian's face sank and said angrily, "When there are people outside, call me, General Shen." The person who came quickly said, "Ignore your father." Luo Shuiyan rolled her eyes at Shen Xian, pretending. The newcomer was a young man in his 20s. He had a dignified appearance with wheat-colored skin and 2 dimples when he smiled, which added to his childishness. This youth looked similar to Luo Shuiyan and was Shen Xian's son, Shen Qiu. Shen Qiu was 22 this year and was brought to the battlefield by Shen Xian when he was 10 years old. It was said that a strict teacher produces an outstanding disciple. Shen Qiu was also brave and fierce. After so many years, he had earned a few meritorious deeds. Now, he was a rank 4 minor general. "Dad, Mom, I've already given you your birthday gift. What should I give?" Shen Qiu scratched his head, feeling a little lost. "This little brat. What gift are you giving? Why are you asking us? As a man, if you can't even make a decision on such a small matter, then why are you going to the battlefield?" Shen Xian seized the opportunity to scold his son. "I haven't been to Grandma's birthday party for a long time." Shen Qiu said awkwardly, "I also don't know what to send. I can't possibly report how many enemies I killed. Birthday parties are inauspicious." Luo Shuiyan was amused by Shen Qiu's words. "It is nothing. Previously did His Majesty not reward you with a bolt of heaven silk brocade? You can give that to old Furen. I heard that there is a shortage of this heaven silk brocade in the Ding capital and even the ladyships in the palace do not have it. If old Furen is able to get one bolt, naturally she would be happy." Chapter 138. "But that's for my younger sister," Shen Qiu hurriedly said. "Forget it." Shen Xian waved his hand. "Have you ever seen your sister like that kind of brocade?" Even if Shen Xian did not know about the vulgar things of females, he knew that this daughter of his did not like those elegant materials and only liked to wear gold and silver, the more vulgar the better. Even though he was helpless, he could only let Shen Miao be happy. Even though the Tianxi brocade was beautiful, it did not mean that Shen Miao would appreciate it. When Shen Qiu heard this, he felt that his father's words were reasonable. He lowered his head and squatted down before saying softly, "This time I came back in a hurry and did not bring any gifts for younger sister. Thinking about it, I feel guilty." In fact, Shen Qiu and Shen Miao had a very good relationship in the past. The 2 siblings supported each other and lived happily. But afterward Shen Qiu would follow Shen Xian to war every year and would only see Shen Miao once a year. Afterward Shen Miao's temperament worsened year by year and the siblings almost had nothing to say. No matter how Shen Qiu tried to get close to this younger sister, Shen Miao would always treat him lukewarmly. Shen Qiu did not know the reason but Shen Miao knew. Actually it was Shin Yu and Shin Qing, as well as Gue Momo, who indirectly reminded Shin Xayan and wife that they only brought Shin Chiu by their side. It was obvious that they valued males more than females. Sons were able to carry on the family line, so they valued them more and did not value their daughters as much. Shin Miao was still young and was easily affected by a few words. Looking at this older brother again, she naturally felt that he had snatched away all the love and care from her parents and was very hateful, so she was not willing to be close to him. Forget it. Shin Xayan patted the dust off his body and stood up. Tell those brothers to get up and continue on the journey. One must return to the Ding capital after an hour. As time passed, the Shin residence's birthday banquet was about to begin. All the Furins and young ladies were already seated and there were more than 10 tables. Old Shin Furin's reputation was big enough that with this kind of extravagance, all the officials Furins in the Ding capital who had a little bit of rank were here. Of course, the reason why everyone came to this banquet was not because of old Shin Furin's face but because of Shin Xayan's reputation. Even so, the birthday banquet was still lively, just like in previous years. Shin Yu was wearing a 100-pleated Rui Moon dress and the moon-white color made her look extremely gentle and quiet. She was originally delicate and pretty, and after specially dressing up today, she naturally had the intention of having a daughter in her family who had just matured. Now that Shin Qing and Shin Miao already had families, the Furins present all had their own thoughts when they saw Shin Yu. Naturally they were planning to marry the second young lady of the third household into the residence and how much benefits they could reap. After the male guests had delivered their gifts, they were all on the other side, accompanied by the two brothers Shin Gue and Shin Wan. Shin Gue and Shin Wan naturally wouldn't give up on this chance to win over people's hearts. They chatted and laughed, making it very lively. Old Master Su held his wine cup and felt a headache in his heart. His family had a good relationship with the residents of the Marquis of Linen, and the Shin family and Xia family had always been at odds, but the Shin family sent him an invitation. Master Su was a good person. Since they sent an invitation, he couldn't just reject it. He could only bite the bullet and participate. In his heart, however, he was somewhat envious of his eldest son who was bedridden. At least he didn't have to watch this group of old foxes with ulterior motives toasting each other and testing each other. Father. Su Ming Lang blinked his eyes. Today he was also dressed up by his mother, but even so, he looked like a very well-dressed dumpling. He pulled Master Su's sleeves. I want to go out for a walk. Don't run around. Master Su warned. Even though the eldest son did not participate, the youngest son who had never been interested in these things was clamoring to participate, and Master Su did not know why. But Su Ming Lang made a big fuss and Su Furin agreed, so Master Su could only bring along this little burden. Chapter 139. Su Ming Lang felt wronged as he put down his hands. He heard that this was old Shin Furin's birthday banquet, which was Shin Miao's grandmother's birthday banquet. Thinking that he had not seen Shin Miao and Guang Wentang for such a long time, he was very concerned. He originally wanted to take this opportunity to see Shin Miao, but who knew that Shin Miao did not even show her face today. Hearing that Shin Miao had a rash and could not casually meet others, Su Ming Lang's heart was itching and wanted to see Shin Miao. He had very few friends and others despised him for his stupidity. Only Shin Miao treated him gently, and in his heart, Shin Miao was already his only friend. Outside at the female side of the banquet, Jiang Furin laughed and jeered. Speaking of which, Wang Furin and Wei Furin, shouldn't you all specially toast old Furin with a cup of wine? After all, in the future they would be in-laws. These words were not said out, but all the Furins at the banquet were well aware of it. Huang Furin was a noble Furin with exquisite makeup and only smiled when she heard it. One could not tell what she was feeling. Most likely she was well aware that this marriage was just taking what one needed and was not considered a good marriage. If the Shin family really doted on their daughter, they would be so righteous and would not agree to this marriage. The so-called bright and noble was just an act on the surface. Thus there was some ridicule in their eyes. It was Wei Furen who was somewhat uncomfortable. The Shin family was indeed a good family, and climbing up to the Shin family was considered climbing up a high branch, but the previous Shin Miao was too stupid and could not be the matriarch of the household. Afterwards, after the academy examinations, she went around and heard that Shin Miao seemed to be enlightened and her temperament was much more calm. Then she went to propose for her son. But who knew that she did not see Shin Miao today and heard that Shin Miao had a rash? Wei Furen was somewhat worried that if Shin Miao contracted a nasty disease, it would ruin her son's life. Thinking of these, her face revealed an unwilling expression. When these expressions fell into Chen Rochio's eyes, Chen Rochio sneered a few times in her heart. She was not a fool and could see that Ren Wanyun had the idea of exchanging sisters' marriages. Old Shin Furen and Ren Wanyun could hide it from others, but they could not hide it from her, Chen Rochio. However, this was a good thing for her. Ren Wanyun was in a mess from her worries and did not know how Shin Xayan would fly into a rage when he returned. At that time, the first and second branches will be fighting and each of them will be injured. Her will be able to stand out from the crowd. Ren Wanyun smiled as she stood up. Since that is the case, then I should first toast both Furens with a cup. Everyone's laughter became louder and Feng and Ning frowned as she looked somewhat unhappy. At the other end of the ancestral hall, after sending away all the maids, Shin Miao knelt in front of the memorial tablet in the ancestral hall and looked at the hourglass in her hands. The sand had almost leaked out and the time that she had arranged with her was almost up. She inserted the 3 sticks of incense into the niche and bowed gently. However, at this moment, he heard a slight noise. In her previous lifetime, in the Qin country for a few years, she had developed the habit of being extremely vigilant no matter what. Shin Miao suddenly stood up and said, "Who? Little girl, your senses are quite sharp." A familiar voice sounded. Shin Miao turned her head and saw that purple-clad youth leaning against the window, looking at her with a smile that was not a smile. Seeing that she was looking at him, he leaped into the ancestral hall. No matter how calm Shin Miao was, she could not help but be somewhat stunned. Xie Jingxing actually wandered around other people's residence in broad daylight. Naturally, he was not invited over as the Shin family and Xia family's relationship was like walking on thin ice, unless Shin Gui and Shin Wan were crazy. Now there were guards in the courtyard outside the ancestral hall, so how did he enter? Shin Miao accidentally asked out the doubts in her heart. The guards of the Shin residence are really useless. Xie Jingxing said, "I walked over." Chapter 140. Shin Miao frowned. "What are you here for?" Xie Jingxing however smiled and did not bother with her. He seemed to be searching for something in the room, and in less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, he had finished searching. But the result was obviously not satisfactory as he did not find anything. Shin Miao stared at his every move and suspicion grew in her heart. Xie Jingxing's appearance was like he came to the Shin residence to look for something. But what was the thing in the general residence that was worth him to be a gentleman on the beam and take such a big risk to personally search for it? Was there anything else that she did not know? "What are you looking for? Say it and I can help you find it." Shin Miao opened her mouth. Xie Jing's actions paused for a moment and turned his head to look at her inquisitively before speaking with interest. "Shin family's girl, I know that in the Shin family, you are the smartest, but it is better not to have any ideas on me. Then you came to my house to steal things in broad daylight. Is it considered as having ideas on the Shin family?" Shin Miao was unmoved. But her heart was somewhat annoyed with Xie Jingxing's watertight defense. She gave in because she wanted to know what it was. In the end, this person was so vigilant and did not give her any chance. Steal. Xie Jingxing seemed to have heard something funny, and his beautiful peach blossom eyes revealed a dangerous glint. That is originally this marquis's thing and can only be considered as taking. Shen Miao's heart moved and seemed to have caught something, but that thought disappeared too quickly that she was unable to capture it. But Xie Jingxing glanced at the ancestral hall. There are so many people guarding here, and I thought that it was to protect something. So it is to watch over you. He looked at Shen Miao and crossed his arms. What mistake did you commit that there are so many people locking you up? The ancestral hall is not a place where an eldest young lady should stay. What does it have to do with you? Shen Miao looked at the hourglass, and the last bit of sand had flowed from the top to the bottom. The time was almost up. But Xie Jingxing had not left. Her patience had run out, and she said, "Since little Marquis did not find your thing, then please leave. The ancestors of the Shen family are not willing to see a gentleman on the beam." The sarcasm in her words was that no one dared to speak to Xie Jingxing like that ever since he was born. Moreover, it was a little girl. But he didn't get angry and only ridiculed. Indeed, the Qin family's ancestor isn't willing to see this marquis, but is willing to see his descendant being forced into marriage. It can be considered lively. "You are not willing to marry Wei Qian?" he asked. "What do you want?" "So what if I am not willing?" Shen Miao retorted. "Wei Qian can be a good man, but you aren't a good wife. You picked him up. This is the first time I've seen someone who doesn't know what's good for them." He narrowed his eyes, and the devilish smile on his lips was so handsome that it was dazzling. He said frivolously, "Could it be that you admire this marquis, so you are unwilling to marry Wei Qian?" Shen Miao was so angry that she almost laughed. She turned her head and stared at Xie Jingxing. "If you think like this, there is nothing wrong with me. I only advise little Marquis to not get involved in some matters, otherwise when you regret it, it would be too late." Her complexion was somewhat pale, probably because she had not been eating and sleeping well in the ancestral hall these days. She had become thinner, but it made the outline of the young girl even more distinct. Her chin had become pointy, and her eyes were incomparably clear. But Xie Jingxing could see a fire burning in them. "Young lady." Jingzhe ran in and jumped in shock when she saw Xie Jingxing. She suddenly protected Shen Miao behind her and pointed at Xie Jingxing. You. How did you come in?" Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders and did not answer. "Just treat it as if he is not here." Shen Miao was too lazy to care about him and asked Jingzhe, "How is your arrangement?" Chapter 141. I let Ginkgo in the courtyard to buy food and wine, saying that it was sent over from the birthday banquet. At this moment they are eating happily and slacking off a little. But it is impossible to leave. Jingzhe was still somewhat afraid of Xie Jingxing and was looking at Xie Jingxing's expression as she spoke. "Good." Shen Miao looked at Jingzhe. "Jingzhe, can you make me trust you?" When Jingzhe heard this, she did not even care about worrying about Xie Jingxing and immediately lowered her head. "This servant is loyal to young lady in anything that young lady instruct. This servant will not refuse even 10,000 deaths." "Then you listen. No matter if it is you or Gu Yu or Bai Lu or Shuangjiang, later no matter what happens, do not come in. Do not look for me and also do not stop me." She stuffed the hourglass into Jingzhe's hands. "When this lump of sand flows to here," she pointed to a small mark on the glass, "you go out and call people. You must take advantage of the chaos to rush out and directly rush to the Eastern Courtyard's birthday banquet and shout for people in front of all the guests. I think that you have an idea and are bold, so no matter if I instruct you or not, you will know what is the best thing to do." This. Jingzhe was somewhat at a loss as she did not understand what Shen Miao meant by these words. But when she saw Shen Miao's expression, all the questions were swallowed down and she solemnly said to Shen Miao, "This servant will understand." Good. Then you go out now. Shen Miao instructed with a dignified expression. Remember, no matter what you see or what happens, you are not allowed to come in. Jingzhe clenched her teeth and looked at Xie Jingxing before looking at Shen Miao again before nodding her head and turning to leave the ancestral hall. After Jingzhe left, Xie Jingxing then looked at Shen Miao and lazily said, "So mysterious. What do you want to do?" "What do I want to do?" Shen Miao stared at him. Xie Jingxing's posture was leisurely, but that pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes were as sharp as a knife. When that pair of eyes looked at one, it was as if one's thoughts could not be hidden. "If little Marquis does not want to be implicated by me, then leave first," she said coldly. "There is no one in this world that can implicate me." His words were arrogant, but it was as if he could really do what he said. "Since you want to be buried with me, I have nothing to say." Shen Miao turned around. Xie Jingxing frowned, and before he could understand the meaning of Shen Miao's words, he saw Shen Miao suddenly walking to the front of the incense niche and pausing in front of the Shen family ancestors' memorial tablets. In the next moment, even he was stunned at the same spot. Shen Miao suddenly picked up those neatly arranged tablets and threw them into the charcoal brazier on the ground without saying a word. Wood was easy to ignite. In an instant, the flame that had been burning a little soared into the sky. The tongue of fire swallowed the wooden memorial tablets, and the names on them were faintly discernible in the light of the fire. "Are you crazy?" Xie Jingxing looked at Shen Miao with surprise in his eyes. Destroying the ancestral tablets was an act of treason that could even lead to expulsion from the clan. After 100 years, his ancestors would not let him off even if he went to the Yellow Springs. And Shen Miao's sudden action made others puzzled. Was she venting her dissatisfaction from being locked up? But for her to do so, she would only receive a greater punishment in the future. Shen Miao's eyes coldly looked at the gradually charred tablets in the flame. It was not that she was disobedient, but the spirits of the ancestors could not be casually trampled. But the most important thing in the world was the present. Her future, Shen Xian's future, and the future of the Shen residents were obviously more important. If the ancestors knew that her action could resolve the crisis of the Shen family, their spirits in heaven would be gratified. "Little Marquis, it is not too late to leave now." Shen Miao did not pay attention to Xie Jingxing's surprise and threw a bunch of tablets into the brazier with a "hua" sound. In an instant, the flame became more intense. Chapter 142. But she did not seem to be satisfied. After thinking about it, she walked inside and took out the few quilts that Guyu had taken out to dry. The quilts were all cotton quilts and were just dried, so they were dry and soft. "Shen Miao!" Xie Jingxing bellowed, "Do you not want your life anymore?" Shen Miao spread all the quilts on the floor. Most of the ancestral hall structure was made of wood and it was very easy to catch fire. She picked up a piece of spirit tablet that was half covered in flames and ignited a corner of the quilt. The flames soared to the sky and the ancestral hall gradually emitted thick smoke. Jingzhe gritted her teeth as she stood outside and her eyes were mostly red. It was until the sand in her hands flowed to the place that Shen Miao arranged, until the guards in the courtyard outside were alarmed by the flames and all ran over to put out the fire, that Jingzhe then took the opportunity when no one was paying attention and ran out. She ran all the way to the eastern courtyard's birthday banquet in one breath. The entire courtyard was filled with guests who were enjoying themselves, and it seemed that no one had discovered this little girl who was in a sorry state. Jingzhe's lips pulled out a vicious smile and suddenly shouted, "Not good, not good. The ancestral hall is on fire and fifth young lady is trapped in the fire." When the words were spoken, there was an uproar in the courtyard. Was Shen Miao not recuperating in her own courtyard? Why was she in the ancestral hall? Everything was fine, so why did the water suddenly catch fire? Ren Wanyun also jumped in shock. She suddenly stood up as she did not know how the ancestral hall caught fire. Just as she was about to order people to quickly put out the fire, she saw Jing's panting appearance. She did not know why, but her heart suddenly moved. If Shen Miao died in this fire, then she could justifiably let Shen Qing marry in place of her. As for the Huang family side, she only needed to pay a visit and apologize. And Shen Miao's death could only be attributed to an accident. Who asked her to not recuperate properly and run to the ancestral hall and even cause the ancestral hall to catch fire? Thus Ren Wanyun stood up and pretended to say, "Everyone eat and drink first. Most likely the fire is not too big, most likely it was a child playing with fire and accidentally set the water on fire. I will go and take a look first. The few of you," she reprimanded Xiang Lan, "quickly go and find the guards to extinguish the fire." The atmosphere of the entire birthday banquet suddenly fell into a strange atmosphere. Old Shen Furen was unhappy in her heart and hated Shen Miao for disappointing her mood even at this time. However, on the surface, she still had to put on a motherly appearance and anxiously instructed Ren Wanyun, "Quickly go and see what is fifth lady's situation." However, acting was different from being real. If one really loved Shen Miao, one would not be so calm when Shen Miao fell into such a situation. Chen Roqiu and Shen Yu did not even leave their seats, which showed Shen Miao's status in the Shen residence. The Furens and young ladies present were not fools and could see what kind of attitude the people of the Shen residence had towards Shen Miao, and their hearts had some sympathy for Shen Miao. But just at this moment, a loud and clear laughter was heard from outside. "General Shen, Shen Furen, young Master Shen has returned to the residence. Open the door to welcome the general." What? Not only the female guests, even the male guests at the other end were stunned. Shen Gui and Shen Wan looked at each other. Shen Xian returning to the residence? This must be a joke. There were still some days before the end of the year. And the ancestral hall that was surrounded by the flames was currently surrounded by a circle of Shen residence guards. They said to extinguish the fire, but they did not go in. Everyone cherished their own lives, and with the intensity of the fire, who would dare to go in and die? "Shen family's girl, do you want to die?" Xie Jingxing saw that the beams were starting to burn and frowned. "Little Marquis, it is better to leave quickly." Shen Miao did not move. "When there are more and more people, even if you want to leave, you will not be able to." "Less nonsense." Xie Jingxing grabbed her arm. "Go. Let go." Shen Miao broke free from his hand and her gaze was so firm that it was almost stubborn. "Can't you see? I am using my own life to gamble for a future." Chapter 143. Can't you see? I am using my own life to bet on a future. In the fire, Shen Miao's eyes were even brighter than the burning flames, but the determination in them was like a rock and could not be shaken. What is the use of a future if one is dead? Xie Jingxing said in a stern voice, "It is too risky." Shen Miao laughed and looked at him as she said sarcastically, "I am different from little Marquis. Little Marquis's hands and eyes are all over the heavens and one would not need to spend much effort to obtain anything. I am different. If I do not fight with my life, the outcome would be worse than death. I am not even afraid of death, so why would I be afraid of fire?" She paused. "You can leave." Xie Jingxing frowned as he looked at her and a look of deep thought flashed in his pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes. He was not a good person and did not want to put on a show of helping. Just now it was an accident, and now that he had recovered to his senses, he was somewhat laughing at himself for not being able to keep his composure. Thinking about this, Xie Jingxing hugged his chest and leapt onto the beam that was not on fire and said with interest, "I forgot that you are an intelligent person of the Shen family and of course have the ability to escape unscathed. But this Marquis also want to see what kind of ability do you have." His purple robe actually showed some flowing gold in the firelight, and what was even more dazzling than his robe was the smile at the corner of his lips. The youth's expression was arrogant, and his features were as beautiful as a painting. When he looked at him like this, he looked like the passionate young master in the opera. However, his eyes revealed a coldness and cruelty, causing his frivolous appearance to become a bit colder. At the banquet in the eastern courtyard, after hearing that Shin Axian and wife had returned to the residence, Ren Wanyun panicked. Her heart still held on to a trace of hope and thought that it must be some mischievous servant who said that. But before she could think of any good ideas, she saw the servants outside leading a group of travel-worn people in. The leader laughed loudly from afar. "Mother, this son has returned to the capital to congratulate you on your birthday. Mother, please forgive me for coming late." Everyone's eyes looked towards that group of people. The bearded man and shrewish beautiful woman at the front were Shin Axian and Luo Shuiyan, and the youth with a warm smile behind them was Shin Qiu. If it was in the past, there would be cheers and laughter at this moment. With Ren Wanyun's ability to socialize, she would be able to coax Shin Axian and wife to be happy. But today's matter happened suddenly, and it did not happen earlier or later, but it happened when Shin Axian returned to the residence. Shin Miao was still trapped in the ancestral hall, and Ren Wanyun did not know what to do for a moment and could only stand there foolishly. Old Shin Furen was even more so. She did not have any ideas and only knew how to put on airs in the inner courtyard. Even when dealing with Shin Miao, she would use some underhanded methods. In front of so many people, she couldn't even pretend to be flustered. Chen Roqiu's heart was somewhat anxious. Even though she also wanted the second household and first household to suffer together, but now she was also at this banquet. If Shin Axian did not return today and Shin Miao died in the fire, then it would be fine as there was no evidence and they could say whatever they want. But if Shin Axian returned, he would have eyes, and anyone with discerning eyes would be able to see what was going on. What should she do? Shin Qing and Shin Yu were somewhat afraid of this eldest brother-in-law of theirs. Because Shin Axian was after all a military general, he would always have a murderous and sharp aura. These delicate young ladies, would always feel fearful for no reason, and when they saw their mother's fearful look, they were even more at a loss. Shin Gui and Shin Wan looked at each other, and both of their eyes were very dignified. For so many years, they had concealed it well, so there were no mistakes, and had never seen this eldest brother of theirs getting angry. But if something really happened to Shin Miao today, what would Shin Axian do? Just thinking about it made them shudder. Chapter 144. While she was pondering, Shin Axian and wife and Shin Qiu had already walked to the front of old Shin Furen's banquet. Seeing that the guests did not make a sound and only stared at them with a strange expression, Luo Shuiyan frowned and sensitively felt that something was wrong, but she did not know what was wrong. It was still Shin Qiu who looked at the table and then seriously and carefully looked around before asking in puzzlement, Zumu, why do I not see younger sister at this table? With that said, Shin Axian and Luo Shuiyan also noticed. Shin Yu and Shin Qing were there, and even the Shu daughter of the first household, Shin Dongling, was also there, but among the few young ladies, Shin Miao's figure was not seen. Shin Axian smiled, paused before he asked, Mother, where did Jiao Jiao go? Old Shin Furen was at a loss for words. How could she say? Ren Wanyun kept saying to call for the guards, but her actions were slow, and it was obvious that she did not put the matter in her heart. They were even sitting on this seat and did not move. Great General Shen. It was Feng and Ning who suddenly stood up and said loudly, You came back at the right time. Just now the ancestral hall caught fire and fifth Shin young lady is currently trapped in the fire. Her words deliberately made one feel indignant, but in fact it was to help Shin Miao vent her anger. Feng and Ning was favored in the Feng family, and not to mention the situation today. Even if she fell in the residence, everyone would come and show concern for her well-being. Now seeing that Shin Miao was in danger, but everyone in the Shin residence did not panic, her heart sympathized with Shin Miao. Since Shin Xan came back at such a coincidental time, one would not complain to Shin Xan. When the words were said, Shin Xan and Luo Shuayan were surprised for a moment. The ancestral hall caught fire and Shin Miao was trapped in the fire. Everything was fine, so why would Shin Miao go to the ancestral hall? More importantly, why was it that when Shin Miao was in danger, the Shin family's relatives could still drink and have fun at the banquet? Ren Wanyun recovered to her senses and quickly explained, "Eldest brother and eldest Sao, I was just about to go look for the guards and you all just came." She had not finished speaking when Shin Xian brushed past her without a word and glanced at Ren Wanyun, which made her feel as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. It was too scary and too vicious. Luo Shuayan and Shin Qiu also regained their senses and rushed towards the ancestral hall without saying a word. In the ancestral hall, the fire was getting fiercer and fiercer, almost turning into a huge fireball. In it, Shin Miao used a wet handkerchief that she had prepared in advance to cover her mouth and nose, but Xie Jingxing frowned as he looked at her. Even in the suffocating smoke, he looked very relaxed and did not have a trace of embarrassment. He said to Shin Miao, "If you do not go out, you will really die here. If you don't go out now, you can only be buried with me." Shin Miao retorted. "Eloquent." Xie Jingxing smiled without a care, "What are you waiting for?" Before he could finish, he heard an angry roar from outside, "Jiao Jiao." Xie Jingxing suddenly rushed to the side of the window and through the small empty space in the middle of the flames, he could see clearly that the people outside were not others but Shin Xian, wife and Shin Qiu. Shin Xian and Luo Shuayan previously thought that the water was on fire but did not think that the fire would be so fierce, and instantly their eyes were about to crack. There was a group of guards outside the ancestral hall, but no one went in to save and only found some buckets to splash water to put out the fire. However, this was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. If they were to rush in, how would Shin Miao still have her life? Shin Qiu gritted his teeth, "I will go and save younger sister." Finishing, he wanted to rush in, but before he could even take 2 steps, the scale outside fell in front of him with a "pa" sound and the burning fire made crackling sounds, blocking the way forward. "Jiao Jiao." Younger sister. In the room, Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and said, "So your little name is Jiao Jiao, but it does not match the person at all." Chapter 145. The person that I am waiting for has arrived. Little Marquis should think of a way to get out yourself. Shin Miao's eyes were filled with killing intent. Now that she had arranged this show herself, it was to let Shin Xian see clearly what kind of situation was this harmonious and friendly Shin residence, and what kind of evil intentions were hidden in those relatives who kept saying that they doted on her. Military generals were loyal and they were not fools. They were just not willing to use the most vicious thoughts to guess a person's heart, and she did not have much time to let Shin Xian slowly understand, thus she could only use the most direct and violent means to let them see clearly. She picked up a piece of wood that was on fire from the ground and fiercely touched it on her arm. Xie Jingxing was startled for a moment. Shin Miao gritted her teeth and large drops of sweat flowed down her forehead. She threw away that piece of wood, and on her fair arm, there was a burn mark. Xie Jingxing could not hide the shock in his heart. It was not that he had never met females who were ruthless to him in his entire life. Those females among the death warriors would also treat him like this without hesitation. But Shin Miao was not a death warrior. She was just a delicate young lady in a noble family. Her life should be the same as those noble young ladies in the Ding capital, just like her name, delicate and soft, and not something that would burn his body without a frown. He saw Shin Miao put some flames on her body before straightening her body and running outside. She stumbled as she ran, as if she was about to fall, but her movements were extremely precise and there were no flames in the places that she ran past. Xie Jingxing narrowed his eyes and saw clearly that the path was narrow and there was a small opening in the burning ancestral hall. It seemed that someone had long prepared it and poured something that would not catch fire on it, so that she could successfully escape from it. Everything was arranged by Shen Miao. She really used her own life to gamble for a future, and she won the gamble, so the unlucky ones would be the others. Xie Jingxing's lips curled into a smile. He took a meaningful glance at the back of the figure that had disappeared into the flames. Then, he rushed to another exit, which was the back door of the ancestral hall. His body was as light as a swallow. With a punch and a kick, this incomparably dangerous fiery cage in him were like flat ground. In the blink of an eye, he had rushed out. The people on the other side were already there. When they saw him coming out, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Master. The thing isn't in the ancestral hall. Shen Xian is back. Let's go, he said quickly and disappeared into the woods behind the ancestral hall. Outside, Shen Miao stumbled out. Seeing Shen Miao's figure, Shen Qiu jumped up, younger sister. Shen Xian and Luo Shuaiyan almost cried tears of joy. They had tried to brave the fire and rush in, but who knew that they could not get in. Now that they saw Shen Miao running out by herself, they were overjoyed. Jiao Jiao. When Shen Miao ran out, her legs softened and she fainted. Shen Qiu quickly caught her and saw that there was a shocking burn mark on Shen Miao's left arm. Shen Qiu's eyes suddenly turned red and Shen Miao shrank in his embrace as she muttered with her eyes closed, "Let me out, I will not marry." When Shen Xian and Luo Shuaiyan, who had rushed over, heard this, they were immediately stunned on the spot. In the western courtyard, there was a thick fragrance of medicine in the air. The servants inside and outside seemed to be busy, and in this seemingly deserted courtyard, there seemed to be an upgrade. And at this moment, the room was bustling. I handed Jiao Jiao over to both younger sisters, thinking that younger sisters would definitely help me look after Jiao Jiao, but now it seems that it is not so. If I did not come back at the right time, one fear that Jiao Jiao would have died in this fire without anyone knowing. Luo Shuaiyan hugged her chest and sneered. Naturally, she was not a person that was easy to get along with, and on the battlefield, she had the nickname of Rakshas's woman. Usually she was polite to the people of the Shen residence, but that was only on account of their upbringing of Shen Miao. Who knew that today, it was as if the mask of the past had been torn off, and her heart was extremely angry, so her words were naturally merciless. Chapter 146. Sister-in-law, it's not like that. Ren Wanyun explained with an apologetic smile, just now I had already asked the guards to extinguish the fire. I see Jiao Jiao as my own daughter, so how can I watch her fall into danger? Sister-in-law, you know very well how I've treated Jiao Jiao all these years. Otherwise, why would Jiao Jiao be so close to us? She was also anxious in her heart. Luo Shuaiyan had never blushed with anyone before, probably because she did not understand the affairs of the inner courtyard women. In the past, she was easy to coax, but when she really did not let it go, her imposing manner was also very shocking. Biological daughter. Luo Shuaiyan sneered, our Jiao Jiao cannot afford to be such a vicious mother like you. She faced Ren Wanyun and forced Ren Wanyun to retreat step by step, but her tone was cold. I also want to ask younger sister. Since it is old Tai Tai's birthday, why is Jiao Jiao alone in the ancestral hall? Fifth lady wants to go to the ancestral hall to burn incense for old ancestor. Under Luo Shuaiyan's intense gaze, Ren Wanyun panicked and found a clumsy excuse. Ren Wanyun. Luo Shuaiyan sternly shouted, you are using these excuses to deceive me, do you think I am a fool? What locking her in the ancestral hall? What forcing her to marry him? I'll settle this debt one by one. I won't let this matter go so easily. Ren Wanyun, Luo Shuayan was originally shrewish, and when she started to compete, there was a kind of overbearing majesty. As long as my Jiao Jiao is not good, you see how I will settle the accounts with you. She finished speaking in one breath, causing everyone in the room to tremble in fear. Luo Shuayan was not in the Shin residence all year round, and the servants in the room did not treat her as a proper master. And there were even more people who were Ren Wanyun's eyes. Every time Luo Shuayan came back, she was always smiling. She was open-minded and straightforward. She didn't haggle over small things. Everyone thought that she was easy to talk to. They had never seen her so stern. It made Ren Wanyun unable to spit out a single word, and her face turned purple. Shin Miao, who was sleeping in the inner room, turned over, but her pair of eyes were very clear. She racked her brains to act this out and did not even hesitate to leave scars on her body, just to eliminate any possibility of Ren Wanyun being forgiven. The Shin family were all experts in acting. If they put on a few plays and said some good words, one was afraid that it would make people soft-hearted. Unless the harm had already been done, no parent would tolerate others hurting their children, just like her Wanyu and Fu Ming. Now Luo Shuayan did not trust Ren Wanyun and Chen Roqiu like in the past, and treated the second and third households people with the attitude of an enemy. At least her burns were not in vain. That was good. And in the outer courtyard, Shin Xian and Shin Qiu were currently facing Shin Gui and Shin Wan. Big brother, this is all a misunderstanding. Shin Gui was somewhat badly battered. He did not know that Ren Wanyun wanted to change the marriage of Shin Miao and Shin Qing sisters, and the reason why Shin Miao was locked up in the ancestral hall was because Shin Miao had committed a mistake previously. Shin Gui had been brooding over the matter of Shin Miao contradicting him in Rongjing Tang that day, and naturally did not have any opinion on bringing Shin Miao into the ancestral hall, but who knew that something would happen at this critical juncture? Second Shu, this is not considered as a misunderstanding. Shin Qiu took a step forward and clenched his fists tightly, trying his best to control his impulse to go forward and overturn the two of them. During Zuma's birthday banquet, only my younger sister was locked up in the ancestral hall. I want to ask, what mistake did she commit, and why are there so many guards at the door? These guards did not go to save her, and just watch from the outside. Second Shu, third Shu, can I understand that these guards did not go to save her, but to block the path of others, and think of ways to take my younger sister's life? Shin Qiu was after all young and impetuous, so naturally he would not think before speaking, and said whatever he thought of. He did not disappoint Shin Miao's expectations, and the words he said were even more serious than what Shin Miao had thought. When the words were said, Shin Xian's face darkened and Shin Gui and Shin Wan jumped in shock. Shin Wan quickly persuaded, eldest nephew, how can you say it like that? Fifth mother is our niece, why would we harm her? He looked at Shin Xian, big brother, today's matter was an accident. Big brother has lived with us for so many years, if we wanted to harm fifth mother, how would we raise her up to this age? Does big brother not believe us? Chapter 147. Shin Wan was a scholar, and when he put on a bright and clear appearance, he was able to deceive people's hearts, as if he was the only upright and plain-spoken person in the world. But Shin Xian did not fall for this. If it was in the past, he would most likely think that this was a misunderstanding. After all, they had raised Shin Miao so well for so many years, and even Shin Miao was willing to be close to them. But after today's matter, when he looked at these people again, he only felt that under the surface of a scholarly person, there was a wolf's ambition. Thus under Shin Gui and Shin Wan's shocked gaze, Shin Xian scolded, your mother's fart. Do you think that this father is easy to deceive? I handed Jiao Jiao over to you, but you want to harm her. Lock her up in the ancestral hall and force her to marry. Shin Gui, Shin Wan, do not think that this father is not in the capital, that this father's daughter can be bullied by you. Today I, Shin Xan, will leave my words here. Wait till Jiao Jiao wakes up, then we shall see. Shin Gui and Shin Wan were dumbstruck. Even though Shin Xan was a rough military general, but for so many years, he had always restrained his rough temperament in front of them. Even though he was not as elegant as those scholars, but with one look, one knew that this Shin Xan was a hooligan in his bones. These words made Shin Gui and Shin Wan not know how to continue. In fact, Shin Xan was also angered to the extreme. Originally, when he saw his own daughter in a sea of fire, his heart was angry and in pain, but the words that Shin Miao said before she fainted became the last straw that broke the camel's back. The simpler she said it, the more it made one's imagination run wild and even made Shin Xan guess what kind of days Shin Miao was living in the Shin residence. The more he thought, the more disgusted he looked at his two younger brothers. If it was possible, Shin Xan wished he could pull out his sword and slash these two beasts. Shut up! An angry shout was heard from behind. Everyone turned around and saw Fu'er and Sheer supporting old Shin Furen as they walked over. Old Shin Furen almost had a heart attack from anger. She cared about Face the most in her life, but today on her birthday banquet, she made a fool of herself in front of all the reputable people in the Ding capital. The guests had personally seen Shin Xan and Luo Shuiyan's denouncing look and knew that one could not stay for long, so they hurriedly left. Only the banquet that was halfway through was left. Now that all the guests had left, she hurried over wanting to question them, but who knew that she would see the scene of Shin Xan questioning Shin Gui and Shin Wan and naturally did not hesitate to speak out. Shin Qiu turned his head back and saw old Shin Furen. He greeted her as Zhu Mu, but his attitude was not warm. In the past, when Shin Yuan was around, old Shin Furen favored Shin Yuan a little, and everyone said that it was because old Furen did not like to fight and kill and Shin Yuan walked the path of a civil official, thus old Furen favored Shin Yuan. But most children would have an intuition that Shin Qiu instinctively did not like to be close to old Shin Furen, and later on when he came back less, he became even more distant. This time he had personally witnessed Shin Miao falling into a trap and the banquet was still able to continue. Shin Qiu's heart did not feel good and he could not wait to stand up for his younger sister. Old Shin Furen glanced at Shin Qiu before her eyes swept across Shin Xan and finally put on airs. Eldest Shin, you just returned to the residence, and what kind of prestige are you showing to your two younger brothers? Why, do you want to put on the airs of a general in my Shin family? When old Shin Furen was young, even though she was a songstress and had unfilial means in the dark, she was still very gentle and virtuous on the surface and made the old general obedient. Before the old general died, he told Shin Xan that Shin Gui and Shin Wan walked the path of a civil official and only Shin Xan inherited the mantle, and to support his two younger brothers, one must make the family harmonious. When old General Shin was still alive, he had a deep father-son relationship with Shin Xan, and Shin Xan would always remember his words. So in these years, his respect towards old Shin Furen did not change at all. Chapter 148. But in the past, people's feelings were always directed downwards. Parents love their children and children love the next generation of children, but there were very few who loved their parents more than their children. Shin Xan was the same. Between a mother who was not related by blood and his own flesh and blood, Shin Xan naturally would not hesitate to choose his flesh and blood. Old Shin Furen's words did not have any use in Shin Xan's ears. He cupped his fists towards old Shin Furen. Mother, it is not that I am putting on airs in the residence, but today's matter is really fishy. I am the formidable great general, and if I cannot even protect my own daughter's safety, how would I have the face to see the Shin family's ancestors? Would it not be a shame to my prestige outside? I will definitely get to the bottom of this matter. Today should be celebrating Mother's birthday, but this son is unfilial and is unable to watch Jiao Jiao fall into a predicament as if nothing had happened, so one can only apologize to Mother in the future. His words were full of hidden sarcasm. Shen Miao was in a predicament, but these Shen family people still had the mood to continue the banquet as if nothing had happened. Old Shen Furen stood blankly at the same spot. Shen Axayan had always been well-behaved towards her. When she was young, she had thought of using other means to kill Shen Axayan, but the old general doted on Shen Axayan like his lifeblood and did not give her any chance to do so. When Shen Axayan grew up, there was no other way. But Shen Axayan treated her with respect and she was happy to put on a show. This was the first time Shen Axayan refuted her words in such a strong manner, and she was so shocked that she did not make a sound. Shen Axayan then turned his head to look at Shen Gui and Shen Wan and said in a gloomy tone, "I will naturally investigate clearly what is going on in this matter. Second younger brother and third younger brother, farewell." He turned and strode away, not even looking at the rest of them. Shen Qiu quickly followed. After walking out of the eastern courtyard, Shen Axayan then said to Shen Qiu, "Later give the fire rat fur cloak to your younger sister. I see that the danger in the residence is not comparable to the battlefield and your younger sister needs it more than old Tai Tai." "Yes." Shen Qiu was overjoyed and immediately thought of something. "Father, before younger sister fainted, we have to check on what marriage matters. The Northwest has never received any news about these things." "Humph." Shen Axayan said in a deep voice, "I see that there are quite a number of demons and ghosts in the general residence. This time your younger sister almost lost her life. Find those who do not want their lives and let this old man serve them with great torture." Residence of the Marquis of Linen. When Xie Jingxing returned to the room, he saw a person sitting in front of the table. That person's white robes fluttered as he gently fanned himself and smiled at him. "What are you here for?" Xie Jingxing put down the sword in his hand and asked. "I heard that you went to the Shen residence to look for something. What was the result?" Gao Yang asked with a smile. "No. I have long guessed that the thing is not in the Shen residence." Gao Yang shook his head and a trace of disappointment flashed across his face. "If the thing is not in the Shen residence, what are you going to do next?" 8 immortals crossing the sea, each showing their supernatural powers. Xie Jingxing sat opposite him and poured himself a cup of tea. What else can it be? But with Shen Axayan's return to the capital this time, there might be new turbulence in Mingqi. Gao Yang looked at him and the fan in his hand slightly paused. At this time, will the Fu family? He placed his hand on his neck and made a gesture of silencing someone. The Shen family's merits are too high to cover the lords, adding oil to the fire. Sooner or later there will be such a day. Xie Jingxing drank a mouthful of tea and evaluated in a flat tone without a trace of sympathy. Gao Yang shrugged his shoulders and suddenly thought of something. He took out a small green bottle from his bosom. "Last time I heard from Tai Yi that your hand was injured, so I prescribed this medicine for you." "What medicine do I need for a small injury?" Xie Jingxing frowned. "This medicine of mine will not leave a scar." Gao Yang forcefully stuffed the medicine bottle into Xie Jingxing's hands. "It is not good to leave a scar. I am not a woman." Xie Jingxing threw the medicine bottle back like he was avoiding the plague. "Take it back. If you were a woman, you would cry and beg me for it." Gao Yang said, "Take it back. This medicine is very expensive. 1 bottle is worth 1,000 gold. Xie Jingxing swept a glance at him and his lips curled up in disdain. But suddenly he thought of the sea of fire and the scene of the young female burning the tablet on her hand without hesitation. Afraid of leaving a scar? That might not be the case. After muttering to himself for a moment, he reached out and kept the medicine bottle back into his bosom. Chapter 149. Following Shen Axayan's victorious return to the court, there was a huge uproar in the Ding capital. The first to bear the brunt was naturally praising Shen Axayan's bravery and martial prowess as he was victorious in hundreds of battles. This time he had taken the enemy's surrender letter, and when the banquet was held, the emperor would definitely bestow numerous rewards. But now that Shin Xayan was already a first-rank official, he really could not be promoted anymore. Everyone guessed that this reward would most likely fall onto Shin Xayan's son, Shin Qiu. The other matter was that on the day Shin Xayan returned to the capital, it coincided with old Shin Furin's birthday, but unfortunately the ancestral hall caught fire, and unfortunately fifth Shin young lady was still trapped in the ancestral hall. That day everyone in the Shin family had a cold attitude, and Shin Xayan had personally witnessed it. One feared that the Shin family would not be peaceful in the future. These two matters were spread in an uproar in the Ding capital. Some people only laughed when they heard it, but when others heard it, they were like ants on a hot pan, anxiously pacing around in circles. In the western courtyard of the Shin residence, in the boudoir, Shin Miao stood up with her clothes draped over her shoulders. Shin Xayan and wife were summoned to the palace by the emperor, but before they left, they specially mobilized the guards from the army to guard the western courtyard. It was as if it was clearly shown to the Shin family that they were guarding against the Shin family. Yesterday Shin Xayan returned in a hurry and went around to look for a physician. Afterwards, when Shin Miao rested, he did not dare to disturb her. He did not even speak to Shin Miao. "Does young lady feel better?" Jing Zhi said worriedly. Her gaze landed on the cloth wrapped around Shin Miao's arm and her eyes turned sour. She said, "If this servant was faster yesterday, young lady would not need to suffer such torment. Now there is even a scar." That burn mark was too deep, and the physician said that one could only take good care of it, as it was impossible to not have a scar at all. Females all cherished their own appearance, and it was not acceptable even if there was a little scar on the body. Now that Shin Miao was scalded, Jing Zhi would blame herself every time she thought about it. "Nothing." Shin Miao looked at her and said with a smile, "You did very well yesterday. You did not rush in because you were anxious. If you had rushed in, it would have spoiled my matters." Jing Zhi lowered her head. Afterwards, when Shin Miao fainted and Shin Xayan and wife were furious, she thought about it and roughly understood what Shin Miao was thinking. It was because of this that Jing Zhi's heart ached for Shin Miao even more. Most likely it was because she was at the end of the road that she did not hesitate to put herself in such a dangerous situation, to let Shin Xayan and wife see the true face of the Shin family. An unmarried young female, at this age, should be playing the zither and writing like the young ladies of other families, but Shin Miao's every move was related to her own life. Whatever he wanted, he had to plan it himself. It was as if he was walking on the edge of a blade, and a moment of carelessness would lead to eternal damnation. "This servant will do whatever young lady says," Jing Zhi muttered. Shin Miao's heart was gratified. Jing Zhi was indeed the most daring among the four maids. In the future, if there were such matters, Jing Zhi could be of use. Naturally, it was necessary to slowly train Gu Yu and the rest. She was not an unmarried daughter, Shin Miao, but the ruler of the 6 palaces, Empress Shin. She must have her own confidence, and what she would face in the future would be much more dangerous than what was in front of her. If she could get used to it, then these maids must also learn to get used to it. Just as he was thinking, he heard a hearty laughter coming from outside. "Little sister." Shin Miao turned her head back and saw Shin Qiu walking in from the door. He had taken off the armor he wore on the battlefield and was only wearing a green robe, making him look exceptionally heroic. Wheat-colored skin and 2 dimples when he smiled made his valiant brows look a little childish. He walked closer and looked at Shin Miao before carefully asking, "Does younger sister feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Shin Miao suddenly closed her eyes, and the memories of her previous lifetime came flooding in. In all fairness, Shin Qiu, as an older brother, did his best. In the beginning, no matter how cold she was to Shin Qiu would always treat her warmly. Afterwards there was a matter where Shin Qiu tainted the innocence of another young lady and was forced to marry that young lady. Thus everything changed. Mistakes were often made in military matters, and later he fell from a horse and broke his leg. Afterwards that young lady gave Shinchio a green hat and Shinchio killed the adulterer in a rage. Who knew that it was the only son of the Minister of Personnel? The Minister of Personnel wrote an imperial report and Shin Exeon used up all of his family's wealth to save Shinchio's life. But Shinchio still died in a winter morning and someone found his corpse in a pond. Chapter 150. At that time, Shin Miao was already married to Fu Xiaoyi and it was the crucial time for the fight for the throne. When she heard the grievous news, she rushed back to the residence and saw Shinchio's deformed and swollen body. Even if she was not close to Shinchio, but after all they had the same blood flowing in them. She was in pain because of this and fell seriously ill, but Fu Xiaoyi let Shin Exeon go out to battle at that time. That cold winter sun, the wet body outside the pond, Shinchio's deformed and pale face, and the youth's fawning smile in front of her, was like a sharp sword that pierced her until she could not breathe. Shin Miao suddenly bent down and clutched her chest as she gasped for air. Younger sister. Shinchio jumped in shock and helped her up before shouting outside, "Go and call a physician. Quickly. Younger sister's body is not well." A hand grabbed Shinchio's arm and he turned his head back to see Shin Miao grabbing his hand as she stood up and said, "No need. It is just that I am a little weak. Younger sister's body is still not well. It is better to call a physician over to take a look." Shinchio shook his head and his tone was filled with concern. "I am fine." Shin Miao said to the hesitating Jingzhi, "All of you can withdraw." Her tone was firm and calm, which made Shinchio stunned for a moment. "Younger sister, what happened to you?" Shinchio asked. When the words came out, he was somewhat vexed that his words were too heavy. He usually faced those iron-blooded men in the army and had forgotten to be gentle towards young ladies. Thus he slowed down his voice and said, "Father and mother were frightened when they saw you trapped in the fire yesterday. Younger sister, why are you in the ancestral hall? Are you locked up?" Shin Miao however shook her head and looked at him with a smile. 1 year of not seeing. Is eldest brother well?" "Ah." Shinchio was a simple-minded person and scratched his head when he heard that. "I am still all right. The army is like that and have made a few small contributions. Wait for His Majesty to bestow the rewards, then younger sister can pick what you like." After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something and happily said, "Oh right, father had hunted a fire rat and skinned it to make a cloak. Later I will get the servants to bring it over for you. That cloak is impervious to swords and spears, water and fire. If you had that cloak, you wouldn't have been burned yesterday." Before the words were finished, Shinchio froze. Shin Miao went forward and wrapped her hands around Shinchio's arms and rested her head on his chest. Even if they were biological siblings, they were not children after all. Shinchio felt a little awkward for a moment, but also a little happy. Shin Miao had not been this close to him for a long time and was somewhat overwhelmed by the favor. Just as he was somewhat happy, his heart sank. Thinking of Shin Miao's temperament, for her to be so close to him for the first time today, could it be that she had suffered a huge grievance? He hurriedly asked, "Sister, did someone bully you? If someone did, just tell me. I'll beat him half to death." He spoke with righteous indignation, but Shin Miao wanted to laugh. Mei Furen had an older brother who was extremely intelligent and had given advice to Fu Xiaoyi in the previous court. Fu Xiaoyi then doted on Mei Furen and it was not without her older brother's credit. Shin Miao herself was also envious, but at that time, Shinchio was already dead. It seemed that she had not tasted the feeling of having a backer for a very long time. She was used to fighting alone and dividing herself into numerous people, so she was defeated by Mei Furen's hands in her previous life. Perhaps it was because she was alone. Now that there was someone protecting her, it was so beautiful that it was almost unreal. She slowly let go of her hands and raised her head to meet Shinchio's concerned gaze. Younger sister. Shinchio was also startled. The young female in front of him had bright eyes, and when she faced him, there was no longer the impatience and annoyance in her eyes, and what replaced it was a kind of profoundness. That kind of feeling was somewhat unfamiliar to him as he carefully sized up the young female in front of him. After not seeing her for a year, Shin Miao had lost a lot of weight, and the originally somewhat round face had now revealed a sharp chin, making her look much more delicate. Her delicate facial features became more and more clear. That kind of naive tenderness had disappeared without a trace, and when she looked at him, there was a faint gratification and a kind of unknown loneliness. Chapter 151. Shin Miao sighed in her heart. Shinchio had an almost youthful naivety, and this naivety made his temperament very valuable. Sincere and full of vitality, it was hard to imagine that such a person would end up drowning in the pond. At the beginning people said that Shinchio committed suicide because of his notoriety, but now thinking about it, with Shinchio's perseverance, how could he commit suicide because of other people's pointing fingers? As for the initiator, her so-called sister-in-law, she used the excuse of climbing into the bed to force Shinchio to marry her, but now it seemed that it might be someone else's conspiracy. Why does younger sister keep staring at me? Shinchio was baffled. Is there something on my face? He felt that the current Shin Miao was strange. The Shin Miao who did not throw her temper and was not cold made Shinchio feel unfamiliar, as if he was not facing a young lady. Why did eldest brother not go to the palace today? Shin Miao asked softly. His Majesty only summoned father and mother. Shinchio smiled. Naturally I will not follow. Younger sister, you still have not told me what happened yesterday. How did you get trapped in the ancestral hall's fire? His mind was preoccupied with this matter and was also concerned about Shin Miao's injury, so he had to clarify the ins and outs of the matter. Will eldest brother believe what I say? Shin Miao smiled gently. If you will not believe even if I say it, then there is no need to say it. Why would I not believe? When Shinchio heard this, he quickly grabbed Shin Miao's arm. You are my younger sister. If I do not believe your words, who else would I believe? I can tell eldest brother about this matter, but eldest brother must promise me one thing. Do not tell father and mother about what I told you today. If it is said, I will no longer care about you. Why not tell father and mother? Shinchio was somewhat puzzled before suddenly realizing, could it be that this matter is related to His Highness Prince Ding? The letter that the Northwest received from the Ding capital also mentioned that Shin Miao had a special liking for Fu Xiu-yi. But Shin Miao was after all an unmarried female and did not know that the princes were fighting for the heir apparent. It was best for the officials not to interfere, as the earlier they interfered, the earlier they would die. Shin Miao however was unswerving towards Fu Xiu-yi. Shin Axean and the rest were far away in the northwest. Even though they were anxious, they were helpless and could only hope that Shin Miao would be able to think it through and no longer love Fu Xiu-yi. It has nothing to do with him. Shin Miao did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said, before you all returned, Second Shin brought our Shin family's 3D young ladies to Wolong Temple to offer incense. That day I exchanged rooms with eldest sister, and eldest sister's innocence was tainted by an evil person. Second Shin's family thought that eldest sister suffered for me and I was the initiator. I did not admit my mistake and punished me to copy Buddhist scriptures. When Shinchio heard this, his heart broke out in cold sweat, thinking that it was a close shave. The one who almost got into an accident was not Shin Qing but Shin Miao. When he heard it, he was extremely angry. What did this matter have to do with Shin Miao? Why was Shin Miao grounded? This is clearly sophistry. Shin Chio said angrily. He did not have any good impression of Shin Qing, but because Shin Qing relied on Shin Yuan as her elder brother, she often did not put Shin Qiu in her eyes, and even ridiculed Shin Qiu as a martial man who did not know anything about literature. Not only that. Shin Miao continued, coincidentally, the assistant minister of the secretariat, the Wei family came to the residence to propose marriage. The one they picked was me. The Huang family of the junior residence supervisor also came to propose and picked eldest sister. Shin Qiu was stunned. Propose marriage. They had received letters from the Shin family, but there was no mention of Shin Miao's marriage. Wasn't this too absurd? How could there be a child's marriage that the parents didn't inform them? The Shin family's actions were really too much. The Wei family's young master, Wei Qian, is a young and talented man, while the Huang family's young master, Huang Dexing, is a homosexual. Second aunt wanted to swap me and eldest sister's marriage. When I found out about this, I could only say that I didn't want to marry. If I did get engaged, I would run away from the marriage. As a result, they locked me in the ancestral hall. The guards you saw yesterday were not there to put out the fire. They were there to guard me, to prevent me from escaping. Chapter 152. Shin Qiu's expression changed along with Shin Miao's narration, and finally he heavily punched the table. The smile on his face had long disappeared and his eyes were somewhat red as he looked at Shin Miao. Younger sister, is what you said true? Naturally, I do not need to lie to you. Shin Miao said, even that big fire came inexplicably, and I suspect. She smiled gently, after all, if I die, it would be more justifiable for eldest sister to remarry. Too much bullying. Shin Qiu shouted angrily and turned to leave. He was pulled back by Shin Miao and asked, where is eldest brother going? I will go and reason with them. Whoever touched you, let that person pay with blood. Shin Qiu said. Shin Miao looked at him and calmly asked, how do you plan to reason? Where is the evidence? Scold all of them or kill them all. The sarcasm in her tone made Shin Qiu slightly sober up. He turned back and looked at Shin Miao and asked with a frown, what does younger sister mean? Why does eldest brother not think about why I am not willing to tell father and mother about this matter? Shin Miao lightly said, father and mother are straightforward people and father is easily impulsive. It is very simple for him to stand up for me, but what about the following matter? The Shin family is a big family in Mingqi, and how many eyes are watching? Today, father will seek justice for me, but tomorrow, the censors will write a report against father. The corners of her lips curled up. In this world, the more people, the more power. Whoever has more people is in the right. The Shin family's 3 households, the first household against the second and third household and an old woman. Do you think that we can really be in the right? Shin Qiu was shocked by Shin Miao's words, but what made him even more surprised was Shin Miao's expression when she spoke. That kind of dull analysis was cruel to the point and made him raise his eyebrows. This was not something that someone of Shin Miao's age could say. Which unmarried female would be able to evaluate the world's affairs so coldly? He hesitated for a moment. Younger sister, Shin Miao took one look and knew what Shin Qiu was thinking in his heart. Shin Qiu was too straightforward, and it should be said that the entire first household of the Shin family was too straightforward, and in this difficult world, good people would not have a good ending. She said, eldest brother wants to ask why I have become like this now. Shin Miao's eyes hung down, because I came over like this. After experiencing so many things, no one can remain the same. Big brother, I'm not who I used to be, and you're not who you used to be. Now, I only have one question. After listening to me, do you hate them? Shin Qiu was startled for a moment and looked at Shin Miao before slowly gritting his teeth. Hate. Why do you hate me? Because. How could they treat you like this? Shin Miao shook her head. That's not what you should hate. Shen Qiu was flabbergasted. He suddenly discovered that his younger sister's words made him more and more unable to understand, but faintly, he felt that what Shen Miao said was very reasonable. What you should hate is that we have given our sincerity and treated each other with sincerity, but what we got in return is a false friendship that is even worse than that of an enemy. For their own sake, they can take our lives. This isn't family. For strangers to harm us like this has long since become a blood feud. Between family members, it's even more sinful. Shen Miao looked at Shen Qiu and sighed in her heart. If it was possible, she even hoped that she could protect the youth in front of her well, and let him only know how to gallop on the battlefield for the rest of his life, and be a hero that was revered by the people. But she was really afraid. Afraid that one day, the scene by the pond would repeat itself. She could only build a wall in Shen Qiu's heart now. Remembering hatred was better than remembering hobbies, as love was the most hurtful. What does younger sister want to say? Shen Qiu finally said. Shen Miao gave a sigh of relief. Shen Qiu was not really stupid. Once he understood, some things would be much easier. I hate them and eldest brother want to vent my anger. If father and mother were to take action, one cannot kill them all. Shen Miao said, I want to personally deal with them, but this requires eldest brother's help. No matter how Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan were, they did not have any evidence on their hands. If the second household were to be killed, according to Ming Qi's laws, one would have to pay with one's life. Shen Xian might really do such a thing for her. She could use her own life to gamble but was not willing to see Shen Xian and wife take the risk. Death was the easiest thing to do. If one could escape unscathed, then a blunt knife would grind the flesh, and the ones who would feel pain would be those who were being grinded. Moreover, behind her bait, the big fish had not taken the bait. What does younger sister want to do? Shen Qiu asked. Shen Miao smiled, no rush. There is plenty of time. Let us slowly. Chapter 153. Shen Qiu and Shen Miao, this pair of siblings, had not talked for a long time like today. The guards outside the western courtyard were specially found by Shen Qiu and guarded outside so that others would not be able to enter. 2 hours was neither long nor short, as it was Shen Miao who was listening to Shen Qiu's words. Most likely Shen Qiu wanted to make Shen Miao happy and talked about some interesting things in the army and even indirectly inquired about what Shen Miao had experienced in this 1 year, but it was all avoided by Shen Miao. There were some things that it was not the time to talk about. Moreover, the current Shen family had not reached the point where they would frame the first household like in the previous lifetime, and it would be hard to believe even if it was said. At this moment, if one were to make a move, it must be a one-hit kill. Even if it was a blunt knife grinding the meat, one must first ensure that the skin was scraped off. After speaking some more, Shen Miao's face showed some fatigue. Shen Qiu was concerned about his younger sister, and upon seeing it, he said, Younger sister's body is not well and it is not convenient for me to disturb. Rest for a while first. Father and mother will most likely return to the residence when it gets dark. When father and mother return, I will come over to see younger sister. Shen Miao nodded her head in agreement. Shen Qiu got up and was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something and hesitated for a moment before turning to look at Shen Miao. Younger sister, you said that Shen Qing's innocence was tainted by someone. Was the thief caught? It was to protect Shen Qing's reputation, but there are guards in the Shen residence, so there should be people to investigate in private. Shen Miao looked at him and her eyes curved. That thief is very cunning. One careless, and he escaped. So it was like this. Shen Qiu lowered his head thoughtfully and looked at Shen Miao with a calm smile. Since that is the case, I will leave first. He strode out of the room, and when he walked out of the door, the bright smile on his face suddenly disappeared and what was left was a haze. When the servants outside saw it, they could not help but shiver. It was as if they then deeply understood the iron blood in the bones of this young general's warm smile. He instructed the guards beside him, find 2 people to go to Wolong Temple and also check if there are any movements from the capital magistrate's side. He glanced at Shen Miao's closed door and clenched his fists as he whispered, "Younger sister, what exactly happened in this year?" In the room, Shen Miao said to Gu Yu, who was walking in, "Go take some money for Chun Tao and also find a servant to send some banknotes to Physician Qin. This is the most crucial time. We have to take good care of the baby in big sister's belly." She caressed the burned scar on her arm. The scar was particularly glaring on her fair skin, as if a piece of fine brocade had been burned. However, she didn't feel sad at all. She was satisfied as if she had made a good deal. "I still have to rely on my unborn nephew for the rest of the show." "Young lady," Jingzhe asked, "just now why did not tell everything to eldest young master?" What Shen Miao told Shen Qiu, she still concealed some things. For example, the evil person was Prince Yu of the first rank. Jingzhe said, if eldest young master were to take action, at least that one would not dare to act rashly. Moreover, if master and Furen knew about it, they would also protect young lady. Even if I do not say, eldest brother would investigate himself. Shen Miao looked out of the window, one fear that he would have already gone to inquire about the situation in Wolong Temple that day. But can eldest young master find out? Jingzhe was worried, if he were to find out, he would eventually know about it. What is the use of young lady hiding it? Prince Yu's way of doing things is watertight. If I did not guess wrongly, the monks in Wolong Temple had been changed inside and out. Not to mention eldest brother, even if it was father, one would not be able to find any traces. Heavens! Jingzhe covered her mouth. Does that mean that this matter would not come to light for a lifetime? The evil intentions of the second household of the Shen family and the shamelessness of Prince Yu. One thought that after Shen Xian and wife returned, they would be able to stand up for Shen Miao, but at this moment Shen Miao's words almost meant that everything that happened in Wolong Temple that day had been buried deeply and no one knew the truth. Chapter 154. I did not intend to use such a fair method to seek justice for myself. Shen Miao lightly said, in this world, there are still many ways to achieve one's goal. Justice, it was not even comparable to grass. Justice restrained the weak, but for the truly strong, they themselves were the justice. In those years in the imperial harem, she understood many things. It wasn't that there weren't good women in the imperial harem, but those women were like flowers in winter, too weak. They couldn't even withstand the wind and were crushed into mud. Since she was walking on a dark and bloody path, then the means she used along the way would not be able to see the light. But what can young lady do? Jingzhe said, at least master and Furen can protect young lady, and if it is possible, they can help young lady vent. Young lady is after all an unmarried female, and even if one wanted to take revenge, there would be many inconveniences. Jingzhe wholeheartedly spoke for Shen Miao. Father and mother's hearts are filled with resentment, so they would directly go against the residents of Prince Yu, and if they retreat, they can only protect me and make Prince Yu fearful. Shen Miao said, but it is impossible for the Shen family to go against the residents of Prince Yu unscathed. If it is only for deterrence, then it is not what I wish to do. Jingzhe was more and more unable to understand. Shen Miao's meaning was not to let Shen Xian vent his anger on Prince Yu, and also not to let Shen Xian deter Prince Yu so that Prince Yu would not dare to have any ideas on Shen Miao. But looking at Shen Miao, it was obvious that she would not let this matter go. What was Shen Miao's intention? Shen Miao smiled gently, if one offends me, I will exterminate the entire family. Jingzhe was shocked and subconsciously looked up at Shen Miao, but saw that the young female was bathed in the morning sun and the smile on her lips was pure and innocent, but it was like a young beast in the dark forest, quietly revealing its fangs. Her heart was shocked, and at that moment she felt terrified and could not ask a single question as she lowered her head in fear. Thinking that Shinqiu was right about one thing, how was it that in a short 1 year, Shen Miao seemed to have completely changed? Not to mention Shinqiu, even the maids that were with Shen Miao day and night were not able to find any traces. Shen Miao narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. Since the person had returned, the chess game could start. Shen Miao was a small pawn, Prince Yu was the chariot, and the imperial family of Ming Qi was like a white chess piece. When would that rooster be swallowed and be eliminated? Everything was up to the will of heaven. This time, heaven's will was in her hands. Residence of the Marquis of Linen. Even though it was a harsh winter day, the entire Marquis's mansion was still beautifully decorated. When the late Marquis's wife, Princess Yuqing, was alive, she loved flowers and grasses the most. When she was married to the Marquis of Linen, there were sweet words of love and harmony. Xie Ding doted on Princess Yuqing and renovated the entire Marquis residence to look like the princess hall that Princess Yuqing resided in. At that time, it had caused quite a stir. A general had renovated his residence to such an exquisite degree. It was truly a bit comical. Later on, when Princess Yuqing passed away, Xie Ding still preserved all the scenery when Princess Yuqing was alive. They hired professionals to protect and take care of the place, so after so many years, even in winter, this place still didn't feel gloomy. However, although the scenery was prosperous, it was not the scenery but the people who were depressed. Things remain the same, but people have changed. This was an irresistible problem on the road of life. In the end, he couldn't return to the past even if he forced himself to maintain a facade. Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao were practicing their spears in the courtyard. Ever since the academy examinations, both of them rarely left the residence. Firstly, it was because that day when Xie Jingxing challenged both of them alone, it made them lose all their face and they really did not have the face to go out. Secondly, it was because their injuries were not completely healed and they were unable to exercise. Speaking of which, Xie Jingxing seemed to be playing it down that day, but in actual fact, his attacks were extremely heavy. It would take 100 days for one's muscles and bones to recover, and even after recuperating for a few months, they would still feel some pain. Madame Fong was extremely distressed but did not dare to say anything to Xie Ding. Even so, Xie Ding still scolded both of them. Chapter 155. Thinking of this, the two brothers gritted their teeth in hatred. Xie Changchao swung his arm. That day when Xie Jingxing stepped on his shoulder, there was still a dull pain. He said, "Second older brother, one heard that Shin Xian and wife entered the palace today. This time they have achieved military merits, one fear that His Majesty will reward Shinqiu." The Shin and Xia families were in deep discord. Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao did not view Shinqiu as a thorn in their eyes because of the Shin and Xia families' political stance. In fact, they viewed all the youths in the capital as their opponents. And Shinqiu was undoubtedly the most outstanding among those youths. Even though Xie Jingxing was also outstanding, Xie Jingxing did not become an official, and with Xie Ding's protection, they could do nothing even if they wanted to. But Shinqiu was different. If Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao were to become an official, one feared that everyone would compare the two brothers with the D sons of the first household of the Shin family. And what Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao hated the most was to be inferior to others. "What are you afraid of?" Xie Changwu said in disdain, "Only a martial artist who only knows how to fight and kill, and does not know anything about the matters of the court." In the Shin family, other than Shin Xian's military merits, what can Shin Xian do? Now the Shin family is also an arrow at the end of its flight. It looks good, but in the end. He suddenly stopped and did not continue speaking. Second older brother is right. Xie Changchao smiled, who asked the Shen family to be a neutral party. In this world, it is only a dream to want to be virtuous. But many thanks to the Shen family's stupidity, at least in the future, we will have one less opponent. If the conversation between the two of them was known by others, one feared that they would be shocked. After all, Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao had a noble appearance on the outside, and the Xie family did not participate in the fight for the heir apparent position. But just now Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao's words hinted that they had gone behind the Xie family's back to a certain faction. Speaking of which, the Shen family is not to be feared as we still have one in our own family. Xie Changchao suddenly turned to another direction. That direction was the courtyard where Princess Yuqing was recuperating, and it was also the courtyard where Xie Jingxing was currently staying. He thought of Xie Jingxing pointing the spear at his head during the academy examinations, and a gloomy feeling rose in his chest. After a while, he said, "That bastard is getting more and more arrogant." He actually called Xie Jingxing a scoundrel in private, and if they met on normal days, he would be very respectful, which really made one speechless. That's right. Xie Changchao followed Xie Changwu's words and said, "These days he is more well-behaved and father values him more. Could it be that there's an expert guiding him? Is there some kind of conspiracy?" Xie Jingxing had been stubborn for so many years and did not enter officialdom. Even though it was a headache, it made the two Xie brothers secretly relieved. But even so, when people mentioned the young Marquis Xie, other than being cynical, they were full of praise for his heroic bearing on the battlefield. Not only that, no matter how Xie Jingxing opposed Xie Ding treated Xie Jingxing wholeheartedly. Instead, his attitude towards his two filial sons was lukewarm. As a result, the jealousy towards Xie Jingxing seemed to grow more and more intense over the past 10 years. In the past, as long as Xie Jingxing was in the Ding capital, something big would happen every 3 to 5 days, but ever since the academy examinations incident, he seemed to have changed his temperament and lived in seclusion every day, not knowing what he was busy with. But this kind of uncharacteristic quietness made Xie Ding very gratified, and even felt that Xie Jingxing had finally put away his stubbornness and was going to do serious things. Because of this, Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu were even more nervous. Who cares what expert guide him? Xie Changwu sneered, "There will be a day when he will be stepped on by my feet." At the beginning that woman was a princess and did not end up well, much less a son. Chapter 156. In short, it is better to build a close relationship with His Highness Prince Ding during the returning banquet. Xie Changchao said before raising his spear and fiercely pierced it into the haystack in front of him. And at this time the main character of the two people's discussion was sitting at the table in the room. The courtyard where Princess Yuqing was recuperating was filled with flowers and plants, and some trees were still lush even in winter. In front of Xie Jingxing's room, the branches and leaves of the trees almost blocked the entire window. Even if it was daytime, the room always looked gloomy. However, amidst the gloomy atmosphere, the young man's eyes were as bright as the sun. The guard in front of him handed him a letter. He read it carefully and threw it into the warm stove in the room. In an instant, ashes flew out and the letter disappeared without a trace. "What do you mean?" A figure came from behind. The white-clad gentleman was leisurely pouring tea for himself. His posture was elegant, as if he was really tasting tea with someone. The situation has changed. Xie Jingxing did not turn back and seemed to be thinking about something. "Oh." The white-clad gentleman paused and frowned as he looked at him. "Was it not long ago, Gao Yang?" Xie Jingxing suddenly said, "How about breaking before establishing, dying before settling?" You are not this kind of character. Gao Yang was surprised for a moment before shaking his head. Don't you always like to hide your strength and bide your time, and only take action when everything is fixed? If the result is not to win and not do anything, it would surprise me that you, who is used to planning, would say it like this. He asked, did you encounter something? Met a lunatic. Xie Jingxing raised his brows, made me suddenly feel that it is not bad to gamble. He stood up. The purple robes were embroidered with gold cloud patterns. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see it, but in the dim light, there was a faint bright brilliance. Could it be that you are talking about the D daughter of the Shen family? Gao Yang hit the nail on the head. I have heard from Tai Yi about that day's matter. Even though it was bold, it was too reckless. Now that Shen Xian has returned, one fear that with Shen Xian's character, he would make a big fuss. The thing is not in the Shen family. Xie Jingxing said, I have changed my mind. Not planning to use the Shen family. Gao Yang was somewhat surprised. There are too many variables in the Shen family. Xie Jingxing shook his head. The youth's handsome brows lost the usual frivolity and showed a calmness beyond his age. His natural elegance and nobility gave him a layer of mysterious luster that was even more dazzling than the blazing sun in the sky. What do you mean by variable? Gao Yang asked. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up, towards the Fu family's attitude. I have a premonition that in the future structure of Ming Qi, the Shen family will become the biggest variable. Gao Yang seemed to be in slight disbelief. However, his trust in the youth ultimately won over the doubt in his heart. He said, how do you know? On what basis did the Shen family become a variable? Shen Qiu. Shen Xin. Even if there is a problem within the Shen family, it does not represent the entire Shen family's attitude. There is a smart person in the Shen family. Xie Jingxing said lazily, but fate is too cruel. What is the use of struggling? He said, in short, there is a change in the plan. Change the method. You can't be thinking. Gao Yang was moved. For so many years, I have endured for too long. Xie Jingxing said, because of concerns, one could endure, but now. He smiled. It was as if the dark clouds had suddenly retreated and the sunlight poured into the room. In a moment, the beautiful scenery lost its color and there was no light. Xie Jingxing stood with his hands behind his back and lightly said, Gao Yang, I am tired of lying low. I will take action in the shortest time possible. But are you willing? Gao Yang asked. There is nothing to be unwilling about. Gao Yang sighed, and when he raised his head again, it had become firm. Since that is the case, then do as you say. Temporarily hide it from that side and we will start from Ming Qi's side. In the Fu family, who do you think we should start from? Old rules. Throw a ball and whoever catches it first, it will be that person. He smiled lightly. But his fingers touched something in his sleeves and his heart moved. His fingertips took out a delicate little bottle. That was the medicine bottle that Gao Yang gave him. In the medicine bottle was what Gao Yang called a priceless medicine that was specially used to treat scars. Gao Yang said that with this plaster, no matter how deep the scar was, it would fade away cleanly. He held the medicine bottle in his fist, and when he released his palm, the delicate little bottle had already turned into powder. Just like what Shen Miao did, a big fire would burn away all the false balance and expose the ferocious truth, which was the real pattern to take action. Shen Miao used her own scars to eliminate the possibility of reconciliation in the future. Then what about him? His gaze lightly swept out of the window to the dark skies of the residence of the Marquis of Linen. After so many years, he had seen it too many times. Because of the warmth in his memories, he was also willing to maintain the false balance. Now it was time to break this balance. He closed his eyes and his long eyelashes were as beautiful as the wings of a butterfly in spring, but when he opened his eyes, his gaze was sharper than the sharpest knife. In front of his table, there was a map that was spread out. That map was not anything else, but looking at it seriously, it was the map of Ming Qi's territory. From the 13 capitals of Yuzhou to the northern desert Dingyuan City, from Jiangnanzhou province to Dingxi's eastern sea, from the ancient city of Linan to the ancient city of Luoyang, in the center of the territory was the most flourishing Ding capital. The mountains and rivers were turbulent and the heroes of the world came forth in large numbers. He stretched out his hand and gently wiped the center of the territory map with his finger, as if it was deciding the rise and fall of a dynasty. Chapter 157. Shen Axan and wife finally returned to the residence in the evening. Accompanying them back to the mansion was a carriage full of rewards from the palace. If it was in the past, these rewards would definitely have been confiscated. But today, Luo Shuayan had the servants carry the chests directly into the west courtyard. The rewards from the palace were either rich or expensive. The servants in the eastern courtyard could only watch as the boxes passed by their courtyard, and from time to time, there were sounds of things breaking in Rongjing Tang. It was obvious that old Shen Furen, who had taken advantage of the situation, was furious and was throwing a tantrum for others to see. But those who came out from the military would not be affected by such a tantrum. The boxes were still being moved and were extremely efficient as they were quickly moved. Shen Miao was sitting at the table reading. She was reading about Ming Qi's politics and laws. Previously, when Gu Yu and the rest found her poems and songs, she just threw them to one side and did not even take a look. She only heard a hearty laughter coming from outside the door. Jiao Jiao. Shen Miao turned her head and saw Shen Axan striding in from the door with Luo Shuayan following behind. Most likely they had just returned to the residence and rushed over, as they did not even change their clothes. Shen Qiu walked at the back and made a face at her. Shen Miao stood up and bowed to them, father, mother, eldest brother. Her gentle appearance made Shen Axan and wife startled for a moment. Shen Miao was not close to them, and in the past when she came back, she would leave after saying a few words and was extremely impatient. This kind of amiable appearance had not been seen for a long time. However, in that gentleness, there seemed to be a trace of alienation. This kind of alienation was very slight, but as parents, Shen Axan and Luo Shuayan were still sensitive to it. Shen Miao sighed slightly in her heart. She was unable to act like a real 14-year-old girl and act coquettishly with Shen Axan, and it was even more impossible to pretend that nothing had happened. In the previous life, she was the one who dragged down the Shen family, and when facing Shen Axan and Luo Shuayan, there was only a strong sense of guilt in her heart. Luo Shuayan's heart only paused for a moment, and her concern for her daughter quickly overshadowed that bit of doubt. She took a few steps forward and grabbed Shen Miao's hand and asked anxiously, "How is Jiao Jiao's body? Do you feel that anything is wrong?" "I'm fine," Shen Miao replied with a smile. "Jiao Jiao, father obtained several large chests of treasures from the palace today. When your body is better, tomorrow morning you can go and pick what you like. Those jewelry and hairpins, one heard that they are the first in the Ding capital." Shen Xian's words were somewhat flattering. Such a big and burly man carefully trying to please his daughter made one feel that it was somewhat comical. Shen Miao smiled faintly, "Thank you, father, but this is not urgent. Just lock those treasures in the storeroom of our courtyard. After a long time, when I think of the day that I am interested, I will go pick them out." As soon as he said this, the expressions of the people in the room changed. In the past at this time, when Shen Axan carried the chests back, naturally he would let Shen Miao choose first and the rest would be sent to the public. He had always doted on his daughter like this, and no one refuted his words because these rewards were obtained by Shen Axan with real swords and spears. But if it was in the past, Shen Miao would definitely not pick first and would let Shen Yu and Shen Qing finish picking first. After the second and third household picked, she would then start to pick. Naturally, it was because she was close to the second and third household that she would do so. But today, not only did Shen Miao not decline, she even suggested to lock the chests in the storeroom of her own courtyard. Even though Shen Xian did not intend to confiscate the rewards this time, but the change in Shen Miao's attitude towards the rest of the Shen family was clearly seen by everyone. Chapter 158. Even if they did not understand the matters of the inner courtyard, they could see that something was wrong with Shen Miao. Shen Qiu opened his mouth, but Luo Shuaiyan held Shen Miao's hands and softly said, "Jiao Jiao, tell mother what happened. Father and mother are back and no one would dare to bully you in the future." "No one dares to bully me." Shen Miao smiled, "Nothing happened to me." "What exactly happened on that day when the ancestral hall caught fire?" Shen Xian asked in a deep voice, "Why did you stay in the ancestral hall alone?" Both husband and wife entered the palace early in the morning to meet the emperor and only left people to investigate in secret, but there was no time to investigate the strangeness. "I made a mistake and was locked in the ancestral hall." "Who knew that the ancestral hall suddenly caught fire?" she said awkwardly. When Shen Qiu, who was behind, saw this, he wanted to say something but stopped. He knew what was going on, but Shen Miao repeatedly told him not to tell the matter to Shen Xian and wife. Even though he wanted to tell his father and mother the truth, Shen Miao said that if Shen Qiu did not keep the secret, she would no longer care about Shen Qiu, so he dispelled this idea. Shen Xian indeed asked Shen Miao, "What mistake did you make? Even if it was a big mistake, you should not be locked in the ancestral hall alone." "Oh." Shen Miao played it down, "I contradicted second Shu in front of Zumu and others." "What?" Luo Shuaiyan's eyebrows were raised, but she did not reprimand Shen Miao but said, "Number 2 is really getting older and older. A grown man arguing with a young female. Do you not have any face?" Gu Yu and Jingzhe, who were serving in the room, twitched their lips. The first household of the Shen family were the most protective, and it was indeed not nonsense. Even if Shen Miao hit Shen Gue, one feared that Shen Xian and wife would blame Shen Gue for making Shen Miao's hand sore. "Younger sister, why did you contradict second Shu?" Shen Qiu could not help but ask. "Most likely it is because I am not willing to marry," Shen Miao said. "Marry?" Luo Shuaiyan and Shen Xian exclaimed at the same time. Luo Shuaiyan looked at Shen Miao and asked anxiously, "Marry what person? How come your father and I do not know?" Shen Miao lowered her head. "The assistant minister of the legislative bureau's Wei family proposed marriage for their son, Wei Qian, and even exchanged the Gung invitation, but I am not willing to marry, so I contradicted in public." Wei Qian. Shen Xian pondered for a moment. The Wei family is a large family and the son of the Wei family seems to be a young outstanding talent. If one were to talk about it, it would be similar to Jiao Jiao. He was actually seriously looking at this marriage again. Shen Xian had been an official for so many years, and even though he was not in the Ding capital, he had a good understanding of his colleagues in the officialdom. If the Wei family was some prodigal son, he would naturally be able to tell at a glance, but Wei Qian was a rare son-in-law. Shen Xian thought of other things for a moment. "What are you thinking about?" Luo Shuaiyan roared, "He is the heavenly king, even if he is the emperor, Jiao Jiao can't refuse." Luo Shuaiyan's words were shocking. She was a valiant female born from a military family in the northwest, and her marriage with Shen Xian was fought for by herself. Thus Luo Shuaiyan could not bear to see all the arranged matchmaking words of parents. She said, "Moreover, both of us do not know about this matter, so who knows what kind of intentions they have." Ever since she saw Shen Miao trapped in the sea of fire and Ren Wanyun and the rest were calm and composed, Luo Shuiyan was filled with disgust towards the rest of the Shen family and her previous good impression was swept away. Shen Axian also frowned. It was reasonable to say that the Wei family had such a good marriage and if it was arranged to Shen Miao, it would not be considered a loss. After all, it was rare to pick out such a good young outstanding talent in the Ding capital. But since it was such a good marriage, why did the Shen family hide it from them husband and wife? Shen Qiu's lips curled up. He knew what was going on and was also somewhat resentful that Shen Miao did not tell the rest of the Shen family about the idea of exchanging the marriage. However, he could only remain silent. He did not know why, but every time Shen Miao's gaze swept over to him, there was a kind of deterrent force. Shen Qiu himself was not willing to believe that he, who was invincible in the battlefield, would actually be afraid of his own younger sister. Chapter 159. But Jiao Jiao, Shen Axian spoke softly, the eldest son of the Wei family is not bad. For you to be so resistant, is it because there is already a male that you admire? You. He wanted to speak but stopped. In the letters that the Shen family sent, there were frequent reports of Shen Miao being infatuated with Prince Ding. In this world, if Shen Miao liked any male, he and Luo Shuiyan would not obstruct, but the Tian family was different. Now that it was the time for the princes to fight for the throne, if the Shen family were to get involved, one feared that they would be dragged into the quagmire. But these matters, Shen Miao, this kind of young lady, would not understand. On the way back, Shen Axian and Luo Shuiyan had discussed numerous times on how to persuade Shen Miao to dispel this idea, but at the end they were helpless. Shen Miao had a stubborn temperament and once she had decided on something, even 9 bulls would not be able to pull her back. Moreover, to tell a young lady to give up her sweetheart, if it was another person, one feared that they would not be able to accept it. With one look, Shen Miao knew what Shen Axian wanted to say and said lightly, "There is no one in my heart and the reason why I am not willing to marry was because I heard that the young master of the Wei family already has someone in his heart. No matter how good he is, he already has moonlight in his heart. Why should I be the one who breaks up the affectionate couple and make him lose his life for nothing?" Her words made Shen Axian and wife somewhat dizzy. How could Shen Miao say such mature words? It was as if she was a married woman who had seen thousands of ships. Secondly, what did she say about not having anyone in her heart? Shen Miao only gradually understood Wei Qian after she became the Empress in her previous lifetime. In the past lifetime, there was no mention of the Wei family coming up to propose marriage as Wei Qian also married his own Biao younger sister. As a rare young talent in the Ding capital, Wei Qian doted on his wife and at that time there was a good story about it. From this, it could be deduced that Wei Qian and Biao Mei were childhood sweethearts. It was likely that when the Wei family came to propose marriage, that young Master Wei would not be willing. "Jiao Jiao, don't you like His Highness Prince Ding?" Luo Shuiyan gritted her teeth and asked. "Prince Ding?" When Shen Miao heard it, she said lightly, "His Highness Prince Ding is a descendant of the heavens, how can I climb up to him? Back then, I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Now that I've calmed down, I realize that I've gone too far. I don't dare to mention this matter anymore." Luo Shuiyan was surprised for a moment. Shen Axian and Shen Qiu were after all males and it was all right if they did not understand. Even though she had a carefree temperament, she was still a female. Females understood the feelings in a female's heart the best. She thought that Shen Miao was only saying it, but after carefully looking at Shen Miao's expression, she discovered that when Prince Ding was mentioned, Shen Miao did not have any trace of change in expression, as if she was talking about a stranger. Not waiting for Luo Shuiyan to speak, Shen Axian himself cried out first, "Jiao Jiao, father does not agree with your words." No matter who our Shen family matches, you are able to climb up. Which disciple of Ming Qi would dare to despise you, even if... Cough. Luo Shuayan coughed lightly and glared fiercely at Shen Xian. It was all right for Shen Xian to praise his daughter, but it was not easy for Shen Miao to dispel the thoughts of Prince Ding. Wasn't Shen Xian creating trouble for himself? Shen Xian also knew that he had said the wrong thing, so he quickly looked away as if nothing had happened. Luo Shuayan looked at Shen Miao again, and when she saw her calm expression, she was relieved and smiled. Jiao Jiao is still young and there is no rush to marry. There are so many good males in Ming Qi and our Jiao Jiao is outstanding, so would there be any fear of not being able to find a good husband? Rest assured, our Jiao Jiao's husband would definitely be an indomitable hero. Shen Miao's eyes drooped down as she smiled and did not say anything. Her fantasies of the person beside her had long been wiped clean after being disheartened time and time again in the inner palace in her previous life. In this lifetime, she had long decided not to marry, but these words could not be known by Shen Xian and wife. Ordinary females would always be a little shy when they heard about their own marriage. Moreover, in the eyes of the husband and wife, Shen Miao was not a cold and hard person. But after Luo Shuayan's words, they did not see any reaction from Shen Miao, and both of them could not help but feel somewhat depressed. Even though Shen Miao was not close to them in the past, they still understood Shen Miao's temperament. Now that she returned, Shen Miao had become more and more unfamiliar. In one night, she had matured so much that Shen Xian and wife did not know how to treat their daughter. If they were to coax and persuade like before, they would look like fools when facing Shen Miao's calm eyes. Chapter 160. When Shen Qiu saw the embarrassment of his parents, he laughed out loud. Shen Xian and his wife were feared on the battlefield, but in front of his younger sister, they were at a loss. But Shen Qiu's gaze gradually darkened. A person's temperament would not change so much overnight. Something must have happened for a proud and willful little girl to become so calm and steady. Father. Shen Miao suddenly spoke. After a few days, the palace will hold a returning banquet. The returning banquet was for the Shen family's army to defeat the enemy, and the emperor held a banquet to reward them according to their merits. All the civil and military officials had to bring their families to attend, and it was considered a banquet for the officials of the royal family who were closer to them. At the returning banquet, the emperor would reward the meritorious officials according to their contributions. In the previous life, during the returning banquet a few days later, the emperor wanted to promote Shen Qiu's official position, but because of Shen Miao's matter, Shen Xian put up a whole body of meritorious services and got the emperor to agree to the marriage bestowal and obtained the title of Ding Wangfei from Shen Miao. A woman asking for a man's hand in marriage was something that was out of line. Shen Xian had dominated his entire life on the battlefield, but at the last moment, he did not hesitate to use his merits to beg for his daughter and almost ended up being the laughingstock of the entire court. At that time, Shen Miao was only happy to become Ding Wangfei and did not see Shen Xian's bitter smile. From the moment she married into the residence of Prince Ding, it meant that the Shen family was tied onto Prince Ding's boat, and Fu Xiuyi had an honorable reason to squeeze the last bit of value out of the Shen family army. Yes. Shen Xian smiled and asked, "Is there something that Jiao Jiao wants? Father can help you ask His Majesty for it." This level of pampering was like a pearl in the palm. Shen Miao's mouth was somewhat dry. Why did she not discover her father's feelings for her in her previous life? Although the destruction of the Shen family was driven by the enemy, it was also because of her stubbornness and blindness. "I don't have anything I want." Shen Miao smiled gently, "But if His Majesty wants to reward Father." She paused, and when she raised her head again, her eyes were clear and bright. She said, "Father can request from His Majesty to stay in the capital for half a year and accompany me." What do you think? When these words were spoken, Luo Shuiyan, Shin Xayan and Shin Qiu were all startled. Shin Miao would never ask them to stay because they were not by their side since they were young and their feelings were not close, so naturally they would not be reluctant. Every year after the end of the year, Shin Xayan and wife would leave the capital to defend the northwest region. Even if there were no enemy troops, they had to guard their territory to prevent foreign enemies from invading. Actually, there was no need for this, but the emperor still personally appointed him every year. In addition, when the old general was alive, he also had this habit, so he never refuted it. But Shin Miao was clearly asking them to stay. She was urging Shin Xayan and wife to stay and let them set off half a year later. This was somewhat out of line, but in Shin Xayan and wife's ears, they were wild with joy, as at least this meant that Shin Miao did not treat them without any feelings. Of course. Delighted by the change in his daughter's attitude, Shin Xayan agreed without even thinking clearly about the problem. Luo Shuiyan was also somewhat excited. Shin Qiu, who was at the side, curled his lips. He did not want to stay in the Ding capital. To him, there was really nothing interesting in the Ding capital. Those noble family's disciples were not interested, so it would be better to let him fight in the northwest desert. But looking at Shin Miao's face, his heart softened. At least with him by her side, it was good that no one in the Ding capital dared to bully Shin Miao. After speaking a few more words, Shin Xayan and wife left with Shin Qiu. After they left, Shin Miao closed the scroll on the table and walked to the window. Young lady. Guyu softly said. Chun Tao had already informed that eldest young lady's stomach is fine. One heard that second Furin and second master are quarreling about eldest young lady's marriage. Chapter 161. Shin Miao smiled coldly. Ren Wanyun's good plan of marrying the sisters had already gone down the drain with Shin Xayan's return to the residence. If Shin Qing was to be married to Huang Dexing, naturally Ren Wanyun would not be willing. But the Gung invitation had already been exchanged and both families had already agreed on it. It was not an easy thing to go back on one's words at this time. Lifting a rock to smash one's own feet, this was the logic. Of course, Ren Wanyun's idea fell through and she would not let her have an easy time. The poisonous snake wanted to counterattack, but in a few days' time at the returning banquet, she also wanted to catch Ren Wanyun's weak point in front of everyone and catch Prince Yu unprepared. Outside the door, Luo Shuiyan's and Shin Xayan's face sunk. Luo Shuiyan said angrily, "What is the matter with old Tai Tai and your few younger brothers? Arranging Jiao Jiao's marriage for no rhyme or reason. This is the first time I heard of such logic in my life. Furin need not be angry." Shin Xayan said, "I will immediately go and find old Tai Tai to clarify. Once there is such matter, I will immediately explain it to the Wei family. To hide it like this, one fear that there is something fishy. I guess that Jiao Jiao had suffered a lot in this year." Luo Shuiyan said unhappily, "Later I will call Jiao Jiao and the few maids over to ask clearly what happened. Gue Momo is also missing. After all, she was a person who had been on the battlefield and would have a certain sensitivity towards these things." She said, "I see that what Jiao Jiao said is not wrong. Staying in the Ding capital for half a year, if these monsters are not sorted out clearly, one fear that daughter's life would be gone." As she spoke, she glared at Shin Xayan. Shin Xayan touched his nose and naturally knew that Luo Shuiyan was dissatisfied with his two brothers. Not to mention Luo Shuiyan, he himself was also full of anger. He instructed the two guards beside him, "Guard young lady well these few days. If there is anything wrong, immediately inform me. If young lady has any mishap, you will be punished according to military law." Finishing, he looked at Shin Qiu and frowned, "Brat, why are you in a daze?" Shen Qiu only recovered from Shen Xian's roar and said vaguely, "Oh, I was thinking about something and was distracted." He had been thinking about Shen Miao's matter. The people who were sent to Wulong Temple today had already returned with news. They did not discover anything wrong. No one discovered what happened that day. Shen Qiu was not a fool and naturally knew that this was because all the insiders had been sent away. To be able to do this without a trace, it did not seem to be the Shen family style. Hiding the truth from Shen Miao made Shen Qiu even more suspicious. Unknowingly, his younger sister was becoming more and more unfathomable. Look at the time. Shen Xian vented the anger from Furen onto his unfortunate son. Go and investigate the matters in the residence. I will come and ask you tomorrow. Ah. Shen Qiu agreed with a bitter face. He did know the ins and outs of the matter, but his younger sister did not allow him to say it. The Kaiyin court was in a complete mess. When Shen Gui left, he quarreled with Ren Wanyun. Ever since the day Shen Xian returned from old Shen Furen's birthday banquet, Shen Gui had a conflict with Ren Wanyun because of this matter. In fact, Shen Gui also knew that Ren Wanyun was grounded, but to him, once something happened, he would naturally push all the blame onto Ren Wanyun. The reason why he and Shen Wan were able to reach this stage today was all because of the connections that Shen Xian left behind. Even though they had a certain status in the court, but if Shen Xian had the intention to do something bad to them, Shen Gui's and Shen Wan's careers would be in a mess. This was a world where martial arts were respected. Even though the civil officials ridiculed the military generals as unbearably crude, but whoever had the military power would be more important in Mingqi. Between the civil officials and the military generals, the emperor would naturally protect the military generals. Previously the two brothers were watertight in front of Shen Xian, and Shen Xian was also happy to take care of them, but who knew that this time Shen Xian would personally see Shen Miao in a sea of fire. Shen Xian saw Shen Miao as his life, and Shen Gui was flustered at what he would do in anger. Ever since Shen Xian returned, Shen Gui was extremely irritated and Ren Wanyun had to mention breaking off the marriage at this time. It was like adding oil to the fire, and all the dissatisfaction towards Ren Wanyun broke out. Chapter 162. Today was the same. He angrily quarreled with Ren Wanyun and after leaving the sentence that Shen Qing must marry into the Huang family, Shen Gui brushed his sleeves and left Ren Wanyun who was so angry that she almost fainted. Bastard! Bastard! Ren Wanyun touched her chest and her lips were trembling. Shen Gui did not care about his daughter's happiness and wholeheartedly wanted to climb into the Huang family to add bricks and tiles to his career, making Ren Wanyun so angry that she was in a complete mess. Now that Shen Xian had returned and Luo Shuayan was not an easy person to get along with. If it was not that the matter was extremely confidential and if Shen Xian and wife knew that she had the idea of exchanging sisters' marriage, one feared that they would have the heart to kill her. Even if Shen Xian and wife were not able to discover it this time, the fire in the ancestral hall would leave an estrangement in the first household and it would be difficult to take action against Shen Miao in the future. Ren Wanyun hated that she could not hack Shen Miao into 1,000 pieces. At the beginning it was Shen Miao who schemed against Shen Qing and if it was not for Shen Miao, how would Shen Qing end up marrying a cut sleeve? Now that Shen Miao had Shen Xian's protection, it would not be easy to play tricks on the marriage. Furen, calm down. Xiang Lan said as she soothed Ren Wanyun, do not let anger harm your health. It is the returning banquet in a few days and if you are angered badly, then you cannot go out. Ren Wanyun's eyes moved and a sinister smile appeared on her face, you are right. I cannot let anger harm my health. Returning banquet. Returning banquet, I want that little slut to live a life worse than death. She turned her head to look at Kaiju. Has the letter that was sent to Prince Yu residence arrived? It has already been sent. Kai Ju said carefully. Since my Qinger will not end well, then that little slut should not think of escaping. A sneer appeared on Ren Wanyun's face. I cannot do anything to her as Shin Xan is protecting her. If they have the ability, then they will go against Prince Yu residence. Her appearance was like a vicious snake that spat out its tongue. There will be someone who can tidy her up. Prince Yu residence. In the magnificent main hall, there were beautiful Persian dancers wearing thin clothes dancing. Their snow-white bare feet stepped on the soft carpet and there were colorful bells tied around their ankles that made a melodious sound as they danced. Her snake-like waist danced nimbly. The middle-aged man on the high seat had an ugly and ferocious face and his left leg was empty. It was Prince Yu. At the moment there was a petite young female kneeling under him. The young female was about 11 or 12 years old and was still very young. She had delicate features but her eyes were filled with fear. At the moment she was not wearing anything and was gently massaging Prince Yu's legs. This young girl's snow-white body was covered with purple and green bruises. Upon closer inspection, there were even red whip marks. Clearly, she had experienced an extraordinary amount of pain and torture. Prince Yu of the first rank looked at the letter in his hands and suddenly smiled before slapping the lion head on his seat. His action caused the girl to scream in fear. She fell to the ground and couldn't help but shiver. Shen Xin. Prince Yu's mouth slowly chewed on a few words. Shen Miao. Dare to fool this prince. After that night's matter, because he found other interesting things, he threw the matter to the back of his mind. To Prince Yu, these young females were just amusing toys, like those cats and dogs. As for what would happen in the future, he did not care at all. In addition with Shen Gui's concealment, he did not find anything wrong. It was only until this letter came that he finally remembered that something was wrong that day. That Shen Miao had such good means, at the same time as she counterattacked Ren Wanyun, she also played with him. In Ming Qi, even if Prince Yu was a member of the imperial family, other than the emperor, everyone had to be courteous to him. Shen Miao was just a little female and dared to step on his dignity. If it was previously he only had some interest in playing with Shen Miao, this time Prince Yu was really angry and had the intention to kill. It was just that Shen Xian was still protecting in the Ding capital, so how could he make a move? Or perhaps he could also settle Shen Xian at the same time. Prince Yu touched his chin and a trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. Chapter 163. 3 days later, the royal family held a banquet to return to the capital. All the civil and military officials brought their families to attend. Even though it was said that the ruler and officials were celebrating together, everyone was well aware that this returning banquet was only the emperor's celebration banquet for Shen Xian. The Shen family held great power in their hands and also had fierce generals like Shen Xian and Shen Qiu. If used well, it would be a good knife to protect Ming Qi. If used improperly, it could threaten the person sitting on the chair at any time. Towards the Shen family, the imperial family of Ming Qi was both reliant and guarded against them, but in front of them, the Shen family was at least safe when the foreign lands had not been purged. As long as the Shen family did not recklessly wade into the muddy waters of the fight for the heir apparent, the imperial family would not take any action against the Shen family within 10 years. This was something that anyone in the court with a brain could see. But previously Shen Miao was infatuated with Prince Ding, causing others to think that if Shen Xian were to marry his daughter to Fu Xiuyi, the Shen family's position in court would become subtle. But afterwards it seemed that Shen Miao's interest in Fu Xiuyi gradually faded and the Shen family did not need to be involved in the storm of the fight for the heir apparent, so naturally they would be safe and sound. In the next 10 years, the name of the formidable great general in the Ding capital would be able to awe many people. Early in the morning, Luo Shuiyan came over to see Shen Miao. In these few days, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xayan were investigating the matters that happened in the past year in the Shen residence, but those matters were covered up very well and were all insignificant small matters, thus nothing could be found out. But even so, Shen Xayan and wife still felt that it was strange. These days, their attitude towards old Shen Furen and the other two households was a lot more distant. Shen Miao did not tell Shen Xayan and wife about Shen Qing losing her innocence, thus it was even more impossible for Ren Wanyun and Chen Roqiu to take the initiative to say it. Thus Gue Momo's death was casually found as an excuse, saying that her hands and feet were not clean and thus she was expelled from the Shen residence. Ren Wanyun initially thought that Shen Miao would tell the truth, but who knew that Shen Miao would follow her excuse? Ren Wanyun was sure that Shen Miao did not complain to Shen Xayan and wife because of some concerns, thus she became even more fearless. "Miss, there are too few hairpins in your box." Bai Lu combed Shen Miao's hair into a long bun. Now that Shen Miao was thinner, she gradually had the style of a young female, thus it would be inappropriate to dress up like in the past. Moreover, they were entering the palace today, so it was better to dress respectfully and appropriately. But in the past Shen Miao's jewelry were all handled by Ren Wanyun and most of them were gold and silver jewelry and those jewelry were all spent when Shen Miao bought Yan Mei Shui Bai from San Fu Ban as well as helping Imo Qing to bribe physician Qin. Now, the jewelry box was empty. Didn't Master bring back His Majesty's reward yesterday? Shuang Jiang suddenly had an idea. Why not let young lady pick from those? There are definitely many good things bestowed by the palace. Forget it. Shen Miao flatly refused. Those things in the palace, which one was not stained with blood? Now she did not want to wear those things on her body at all, as if it was stained with blood, it would remind her of those tragic years. She thought for a moment, then opened a hidden compartment in the jewelry box and picked out a hairpin. "Oh, this hairpin is so beautiful." Bai Lu was pleasantly surprised. When did young lady have such a hairpin? Was it given by Furen? Shen Miao picked up the hairpin and looked at it carefully. This was the real begonia that Xie Jingxing had used in the academy examinations in the plum blossom forest to exchange for the begonia that she wore on her head. If it was not for Bai Lu mentioning about no jewelry today, she would have thrown this thing to the back of her mind. The entire body of the hairpin was made of jade, from light to dark, until it reached the part of the flower. The entire piece of jade was a sparkling purplish-red color. The craftsman who carved it was also skillful. The begonia petals were in full bloom and there was a sense of prosperity. It was cold and moist to the touch, obviously it was a top-quality jade material. One feared that this begonia hairpin was worth more than 1,000 gold. In the previous lifetime, Shen Miao had seen a lot of good things in the palace, so naturally she could see that this hairpin was extraordinary. Because of this, she was even more surprised with Xie Jingxing. No matter how rich the residence of the Marquis of Linan was, it would not be able to withstand such extravagance. Chapter 164. Seeing Shen Miao in a daze, Bai Lu was afraid of delaying time and reminded, "Young lady, this hairpin looks good. This servant will help you put it on." Shen Miao then recovered to her senses and followed Bai Lu's intention. At the end, Shuang Jiang helped her put some rouge on her cheeks before it was considered over. Guyu held up a lotus-green rabbit fur cloak and draped it over her before smiling. "Young lady is really good-looking. Furen will definitely like it when she sees it." Outside the door, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xayan were waiting outside. Shen Qiu pulled off a piece of leaf and said, "Why does mother not let younger sister go to the bestowed box to find clothes and jewelry to wear? This will save a lot of trouble." "What do you know?" Luo Shuiyan said in a bad mood, "Since the bestowment of materials, when would one see ready-made clothes? Even if there were ready-made clothes, who knows if it was worn by an imperial concubine? I dare not let Jiao Jiao wear it. As for jewelry, forget about it. Jiao Jiao can wear whatever she likes and it is better not to interfere. Shen Miao had always liked tacky clothes and this point was a headache for Luo Shuiyan. No matter how Luo Shuiyan persuaded, Shen Miao was unable to abandon her love for gold and silver jewelry. Thus after a long time, Luo Shuiyan got used to it. The looks were all pink and could not be taken seriously. Luo Shuiyan herself came from a military family and even though she was shrewd and beautiful, her dressing was more heroic and had the meaning of a heroine. Shen Qiu stuck out his tongue and said softly, "If younger sister wear gold and glitter this time." Before his voice landed, one heard a creaked sound and the door was pushed open. Younger sister. Shen Qiu opened his mouth and stared at Shen Miao like a fool without speaking. The young female was wearing a purple silk dress and a lotus green rabbit fur cloak. The fluffy rabbit fur was piled up under her neck, making that small face look like it was only the size of a palm. She had a fair complexion and when she wore the lotus green color, it did not seem dark at all and instead made her look extremely noble. Her bright eyes and white teeth had a light and breezy attitude. The young female's posture was delicate but what attracted one's attention was her quiet and noble posture. Every move seemed to have a faint majesty. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xian stared blankly. In an instant, it was as if they could see past this young girl to the back of the throne room and the noble golden phoenix under the heavy palace walls. They were even inferior to the golden phoenix. It was because Shen Miao used to wear gold and silver that the more simple she was, the more noble she looked, and that kind of quiet attitude was something that they had never seen before. Luo Shuiyan unconsciously caressed her chest. Because she came from the northwest desert, after marrying Shen Xian and coming to the Ding capital, she was often ridiculed by the noble ladies here for being vulgar and lacking in etiquette. Luo Shuiyan herself had secretly invited a Momo over to learn but even if she could learn it, she was unable to learn that kind of refined elegance of an aristocratic family, thus she gave up. Now her daughter looked more noble and dignified than any noble female in the Ding capital. How could she not be pleasantly surprised? Ha ha ha. It was still Shen Xian who broke the silence first. He looked up and laughed a few times and when he looked at Shen Miao again, his eyes were filled with pride and smiles. The Shen family has a daughter who has just grown up. My Jiao Jiao is now also a great beauty. His words were extremely rough and provoked Luo Shuiyan to glare at him fiercely. When she turned her head, she saw the guards from the army that Shen Qiu had brought back and they were also staring at Shen Miao. She could not help but feel a trace of pride before saying, "Never mind. Let us board the carriage first, it would not be good to be late." Finishing, she pulled Shen Miao and spoke to her intimately. Shen Miao was not used to being treated as a child like this but when she saw Shen Xian's and Shen Qiu's doting eyes, she paused for a moment. After all in her father, mother and older brother's eyes, she was still that Shen Jiao Jiao. Ren Wanyun noticed the begonia hairpin on Shen Miao's head and even smiled. Jiao Jiao's hairpin is really beautiful. Did you pick it yourself? You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.